I'll be long gone by then.
Oh, wait, but we know your email address. Wait, where is it?
I'm getting your number.
We have your email and your phone number.
But just like anything else, the concept of why you market and how you market is more important for you as a property manager to understand than the details of doing the market survey. Because any owner or manager of a company that you might work for as a property manager would not use you to do a market survey necessarily. They would either hire a firm to do a market survey or have the leasing people or the brokerage company that they've hired do that market survey. Because as a property manager, you have a full plate already. And if they have you doing that kind of stuff that you may not be familiar with or isn't the main part of your job, then they're not getting what they need for the money that they're spending. They're losing because you're not doing your property management job as well as you could because you're off doing something else. And for the same money, they could provide or get what they want by hiring a firm that can provide them what they need. It's accurate survey and spend the time out talking to people and gathering the data on competitor shopping centers and other commercial properties in the area. So, for Leanne and Amber, we're talking about Chapter 6 briefly, what we missed last time, marketing of commercial properties. So try to point out the highlights of the chapter, and then you could, if you ever end up needing more information, if you become a property manager someday, you can dig back into Chapter 6. But basically, property managers should know what's involved in marketing, and in certain companies, certain situations that you might work in, you'd be involved in the marketing of your property, but you wouldn't be the person necessarily that would do the market survey or actually marketing the property to different clients, different tenants. Normally that's leasing a brokerage company. So let's see what else in marketing is important. Well, it is important for a property manager to get out in the area around your properties that you manage and learn what's out there. But you don't need a specific market survey. Normally those will be done, they'll have historical documentation of surveys that were done of your competitive market area. When you get a job as a property manager, you should look through the files and find those and read them, and then take a drive through the neighborhood and see what your competitors are, see what your neighborhood's all about. Kind of get a feel for where your customers live, what kind of area it is, and that might give you an idea of how much security you have, or if you need any at all. Might also give you an idea of, like for example, if there's a ton of apartment complexes around your shopping center, you know that sometime or another you're going to have illegal dumping in your shopping center. By illegal dumping, I mean somebody's going to drop a refrigerator, couch, chairs, an old kitchen table, and TV or whatever when they're moving out of their apartments and they have no place to haul this stuff or whatever, they'll dump it in your shopping center. So you can learn all sorts of practical things, but you won't necessarily be the person in charge of marketing your shopping center. But you should know, or your commercial property, whatever it is. But you should know and understand what's in that market area and what's involved in marketing your particular commercial property. Okay? If you have survey data that's provided to you by a brokerage firm or by somebody who's done it under contract with the owner, and the data is available to you. You should study that data, and you can use it to make decisions such as what kind of tenant mix you use. But you also do that by studying what you currently have in your shopping center or in your office building. If you have 30% of your tenants are food service, a deli, a pizza place, a taco or a Mexican place, this place and that place, you may not need anymore. So whatever it doesn't really matter what your market survey tells you. You already know from what you physically have in that property that you don't need any more restaurants, so you look for something else. If you don't have a beauty salon, or if you don't have a gift shop or something like that, you might want to try to get something like that. Now, marketing of vacant spaces in your property is normally handled by the leasing people, unless you work for a small company and they ask you as the property manager to do the leasing. Then you better study up on what you have and what you need. Find out what the owner wants, or make a recommendation to the owner what you think is needed to complement the tenants that are already there. It wouldn't compete with current tenants. Then you go out and try to find those tenants that you want to fill up the vacant spaces. Those are about the key things in marketing that you need to know as a property manager. It's always good when you start out as a property manager to meet with the leasing people and the people who've been there before, and just ask all the questions you have. Tell them to please tell me everything you know that I should know about what you do, what problems you have, and what conditions we work with, and all that sort of stuff. And you'll learn, by doing that, you'll learn a lot about the things that affect that property and the people who work there and you as a property manager. You won't know it all, but you'll learn if you open up, let people open up and ask you or answer your questions and tell you what their problems are and what they're required to do. So, are there any questions on Chapter 6, marketing? Okay.
No, I have a comment though.
Yes.
But I thought it was really nice how they sort of, put together like the package. That they give you like little bullet points to put in your package. Yeah. Like the tenant, just, it's great language.
For a tenant, so the tenant would have.
Yeah, or prospective tenants too,
Yeah.
But
That's
it is
all
really
part
nice,
of the leasing and brokerage normally. You want to have something that will, almost like a resume. It's like, this is what you get the tenant interested in, and then you bring them out to show them the space and show them all the other tenants and things like that.
Yeah, and it reminded me, I think it was probably like 4 classes ago that we had that activity where we sat down and you had us do that. So then when I was reading the chapter, it was like, ooh, we were pretty good.
Yeah.
So anyway.
The one with the 4 groups?
Yeah.
Figuring out
Yeah.
how to, what you would concern yourself with in each different kind of property. Chapter 12 deals with some basic common sense stuff, necessities when you're responsible for a property, safety, security, and emergency procedures. Now, we've already talked pretty much about security in all 4 types of the shopping centers. Physical security is one thing, with security officers patrolling outside and inside. There are other kinds of security that can be considered, and they also tie into safety. Lighting, for example, is a security tool. By lighting your parking lot well and by lighting the exterior of your building, you're providing security for customers and tenants, because bad guys normally don't like to come around when it's all lit up. They'd rather wait till everything's dark. Security, passive security like video monitors or electronic devices on doors. When the door is jimmied or whatever, the alarm goes off and it notifies the police. Those are all ways that you enhance the security of your property. And as a property manager, that's part of your job, to determine what you need, what you can afford, and what area your property is located in would normally determine whether you need a lot of security or little security. Of the shopping centers that I managed over the years, only about 60% really needed security. Neighborhood shopping centers in a nice, reasonable neighborhood, like some areas in East Hill of Kent or in Bellevue, trying to think of some other places.
Issaquah Highlands.
Yeah, Issaquah might not need security at all. You may have just or like Parkway Supercenter in Tukwila. It's near South Center, very active shopping strip. Rather than having a guard walk around the place, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 all day long and all night long, we picked specific hours and we had driving patrol, and then certain times of the day and certain days of the year we'd have actually foot patrols. But there are places like Tacoma, Spanaway, Everett. You need security there all the time. Bellingham, there are areas in Bellingham where you need security all the time, but there are also some areas where you don't need them all the time. Amber, you have a question?
What if you need a lot, but you can't afford it? It's not in the budget. How do you be creative and get what you need?
You talk to your owner or whoever owns the company that you're working for, managing the property, and say, look, you talk to the police, you get reports, you keep track of what's happening and what you see, and you lobby for your increase in security. That's what you need. You just prepare your case, and if you have an owner that will come and visit you, you take them and show them what security problems might be, show them your records, have them talk to the police. I had a case, my first job, managing Tacoma Mall. I could not convince the corporate security director in Youngstown, Ohio, that we had a gang problem. Yeah, you don't have gangs, you don't know what gangs are. Okay. He was an old guy who thought he knew everything and been in the business a long time. So I did what I had to do. I worked with the police and with the sheriff's department and had our security as alert and as trained as we could get them. And I kept records of everything that happened. And I'd call every time there was a major incident, explain what was going on, send pictures, send inventory lists of all the weapons that we took off of people, that we kept in our security office in boxes. And finally they realized it. And I'd send newspaper articles, things like that. And I got them to approve a police substation in one of the vacant spaces in the mall. Rather than renting it out, we gave it to the police so they could have a presence there. That's the kind of stuff you have to do. You have to convince the people that have the money, give you more, provide what you need. Okay? What else in security? Obviously, keys and locks are very important to your tenants, also to the property management team. Maintenance people need a place to store their equipment. You need a place to lock up, a way to lock up your office and other parts of the building at night. Your electrical rooms, phone rooms, and where all your computer electronics are stored, that kind of stuff. Your vacant spaces have to be secured. There might be a time you come in and find a homeless person living in your shopping center. The vacancies are open. There's no, even in the wintertime, you have to keep some kind of heat on so that the water pipes don't freeze and flood your building, whatever. So all those are security considerations. And then we talked a lot about security in that time we had the 4 groups talking about how you'd set up security for each kind of property. Now, I think it's pretty easy to understand that a lot of that is tied to safety issues as well. You want your security people looking, while they're touring the property, looking for safety hazards. Potholes can be safety hazards. Cracks in the sidewalk. Some lady comes shopping wearing high heels and catches her heel. Down she goes and busts her nose on the sidewalk. You're going to get sued. Drainage grates and things like that. In the parking lot, not so bad. You know, storm drains. But if you have some kind of manhole covers or grates in your sidewalk, you got to make sure they're marked and they're not a safety hazard, because somebody will find it and fall, and then you'll have to answer for that. Yeah.
It reminds me, I was in my car, I just parked at the mall at Northgate. Northgate has these dividers. They're not dividers, but it's like the shrubbery that grows between, and it provides, I think, parking drainage as well. Yeah. And they have these reeds that grow up. So I just parked and I was on the phone, and I was chatting away as I was sitting there, and this girl comes along to meet the guy that was somewhere over here. They were meeting up, and she jumped over, but there's curbs that you don't see because it helps your car stop. She missed it because the grass was covering the other curb. She biffed it face down on the pavement, and I rushed out right away. I had tissues in the car. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? Do you need a tissue? And she was so embarrassed. She told me no, and I was thinking, oh my God, I'd be bawling my eyes out right now. Yeah. And all I could think about was, I bet she could sue them because it's not, I mean, you're probably not supposed to jump over the median. But there's nothing to tell you that there's a curb there, or maybe there's a bridge walkway in between every so many spots. And I kept thinking, of course people are going to jump over. It looks like you can just, yeah.
Well,
oh, scary.
Oh, so scary.
Property managers need to be concerned with stuff like that. But you can't preclude every fall or accident from happening. And like the company I'm consulting with now in Auburn, when they do construction projects, they put yellow caution tape, they put up those barricades, and people will walk through those to get where they want rather than walk around. So, you know, you have to use common sense too. In the case that you're describing, hopefully the woman wasn't hurt too badly.
She was holding her face, but I don't think she hit her chin. I think she kind of fell on her side and maybe...
She probably should have been embarrassed that she did something stupid like that.
She seemed to just like, get away from me, and I was like, I want to help you, oh my God. It's horrible.
A lot of people would immediately call an attorney or something like that and say, hey, I fell in the parking lot at a mall.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, let's sue. Honestly, that drives property managers nuts. You have a system for keeping track of those things and reporting to your insurance and all that. And insurance companies will normally contact the person. If they have insurance or they have an attorney or whatever, the insurance company will do that. And most of the time they try to settle those things out of court. Going to court can get costly for both parties. And unfortunately, there are enough people in this world who will try to get over, make some money off of something like that, or think it's the mall owner's fault that they tripped over a curb and busted their nose on the sidewalk. So it can be a problem. But the thing to do as a property manager is have your maintenance people, your security people, and you yourself inspect that property and look for problems and make sure that the curbs along the sidewalk are painted the way they're supposed to be for fire lanes and things like that. Speed bumps are painted. Any hazards are taken care of or marked clearly so that you eliminate as many safety hazards as possible. Obviously, you don't want anybody to get hurt, but more practically, you don't want anybody to sue you. You know, I've tripped and fallen myself at times. I used to run a lot, and I just figured, what a dumb rear end for doing it. You know, I would never sue anybody for it, especially because of the way I am. I was a property manager for too long to realize that generally things that happen like that are the customer's fault or some, you know, not paying attention or whatever. You certainly can't blame a property owner or a property manager for having curbs and wheel stops and speed bumps and all that kind of stuff. That's for everybody's safety and for control and all that sort of stuff. And if you happen to bust your butt over one of those, well, maybe you should have paid attention. But what other things can we do for safety? We have signage.
Oh, right.
Part of it is like the traffic flow.
Yeah, that's a big one.
There's, in Costco and like Shoreline, I ran into someone twice, like the same spot. There's a stop sign for the cross traffic. But apparently they didn't pay attention when it happened. After the second time, I was a little bit more.
No, you mean you actually?
Oh,
right?
totally. Because I had the right of way, and there's a stop sign, but it's private property, so the police, unless someone's hurt, they won't even come.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's, commercial properties are private property. And so the police can come and feel sorry for you, but they really can't arrest somebody for doing something like running a stop sign or something like that.
That's why I always try to park on a public street, no matter where I'm at, because if anything happens, the police are on it. So there's a difference from parking in the school parking lot, and every once in a while you can get the parking stalls that are unlimited right on the street, not the other side of the street, but those angle-in parking lot.
Yeah.
And that way, if something happens, police are all on it. They'll take all your information. You'll be covered. Yeah. Anyway, but that's funny because you mentioned the commercial.
It is different from commercial properties. So, what else? Oh, Amber, you have a
I have
question.
a question, I don't know if this is with that, but, when I worked at QFC, the lights would go out
Mhm.
sometimes, and they didn't tell me anything, and in a situation with a property manager, are they responsible for, like, knowing where the generator is?
For the store or for the parking lot lights?
For the store.
That would be the store manager's responsibility.
Okay, so the tenant would be responsible if all the lights went out in the whole mall?
Oh, no, not if they went out in the whole mall. The common area lighting for the parking lot and the exterior of the buildings and stuff like that, except for anchor stores like QFC and Safeway and Target, they're responsible for all of their electrical stuff and inside and out. But in the parking lot, if all the parking lot lights go out, that's the property manager's responsibility. Now, obviously, if the power goes out and it's, let's say it's the property manager's still on duty or in his office, or even if he's not, somebody will call you at home. And then you have to determine whether it's something your maintenance people can do, or whether you need to call an electrician, or whether you need to call the power company or whatever to react to that kind of issue. But inside the tenant spaces, if lights go out in our space right here, let's say we're a tenant in a commercial property, and our lights go out, that's our issue. We gotta check the breaker, we gotta figure out what the electrical problem is, call an electrician if we need to. But the common area stuff is the property. Okay. What else is involved with safety in the shopping center, or an office building, or industrial park? How about an industrial park? What kind of safety issues might you have there? Mike?
Injuries at the job, is a property manager responsible?
No, no. But you have to have tenants that are responsible for their own safety. Big trucks driving in and out of an industrial park could be a problem for somebody walking from one office to another, or one business to another. Forklifts driving around, backing up, carrying heavy loads, somebody's not paying attention. Normally in an industrial park, the safety issues are tenant related more than customers or someone else.
Disposal of waste.
Right.
Yeah, disposal of waste could be a safety problem too. Grease or something like that seeping out from some mechanic repair shop or industrial or mechanical manufacturing place could cause somebody to slip and bust their head open or whatever. That's a problem.
Question for you, along those same lines, I just remembered a situation was quite a while ago, but the tenant that was there used to store stuff on the back platforms where everything
Loading
came
docks.
in on the loading docks. And so there was a large deposits of oil and grease and et cetera. And someone came through, of course, and fell, and actually it was because the light had gone out. They slipped and went off the dock. The guy broke his arm, and then I heard about the lawsuit and et cetera. And so this just kind of triggered that memory of me. Oh, who would be responsible? Because the property manager actually had told the people to clean up the mess and to take care of it, yet they had never done so, and he hadn't actually gone and made sure that they had done it. So
It would be the tenant normally, the person who put the stuff there. If there was let's say your business is whatever, some kind of manufacturing, you've got these big drums of stuff that you use, a solvent or something like that, and you stack them out on your loading dock and leave them there. Property manager comes by and tells you, look, get rid of those, and you don't do it, it's on you. If it's in the common area and it's property manager's area of responsibility, and somebody puts barrels of oil or something like that, and they leak, that's the property manager's problem.
because it was biodiesel, and that's exactly what it was. It was the stuff that they were trying to transfer over, and the guy got in trouble anyway, got kicked out because his equipment didn't get in, for et cetera. But he had been stacking them inside there for a while, and then he put the extras out there. And so that's why it just kind of raised a question on me as to who actually would be there, because although the property manager had said it, he never actually made sure that it got taken care of.
Well, it wouldn't be his responsibility, but he probably should have done his job a little bit better and hammered on the guy. And the lease might even have stated that the tenant is not allowed to do stuff like that, store hazardous material or whatever, and they could have defaulted the tenant and taken him to court. That's a possibility as well. That's kind of the enforcement power that you have when you administer the lease. Okay?
I want to bring up one thing. Oh, is that okay, Amber?
Oh, go ahead.
Amber mentioned about the lights.
Yeah.
About power outages, and it's always and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I worked with a manager of another unit. Had the powers went out in the building. Second day at a job, first day at a job, and anyway, and I said we need to call the PUD. And he's like, who do we call? Who do we call? Or Public Utilities District. So you need to know who services that area to make sure that they're called. But he was in the chain of command to call. But yeah, so you have to kind of approach it nice who you're dealing with, because as long as the utility service district knows that your power is out, the more calls they get, the more they're on it. And that's the only, I always encourage everybody to call if it's out. But that's just me based on my experience.
Yeah, there are times, like in a residential area, when
Makes
the
sense, yeah.
snow knocks down the power lines, it doesn't pay you to call it.
Right.
They already know. It's just another bother to them. So, which question?
I'm asking my question.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you-
Stop it.
I like it.
Are we answering
Yeah, you
correctly?
did. You did. Some parts of it.
All right.
Okay, like like you said, industrial, when you're dealing with a situation where there's residential and industrial together and they're
You wouldn't
operating.
normally have that.
Well, I've been in those situations.
What kind of industrial did you have in a residential property?
They're a paint company right next to residential.
Was it the same property?
No, but it was right next to it.
Oh, okay. Okay,
It was, the buffers were illegal, basically.
okay. Yeah.
As
So
far as-
you're managing which property now?
Well, I'm asking if there was a property manager on that paint company and that was operating after hours, 24 hours a day.
And it was,
And the residents were upset and calling, would it be the property manager's responsibility to make sure, to enforce that they stop doing that, or would it be the tenant's responsibility?
well, if there's a property manager for the residential, for the apartment complex, that person should call the property manager for the
No, it's like homes, houses.
homes. Okay, so a homeowner should call a property manager. And the property manager will determine whether it's his responsibility or the tenant's.
So
Just
they
like
call
that,
the paint
just
company.
like that tenant, that a customer that called in the exam and complained about being charged too much. That's not the property manager's responsibility, but the property manager would probably get the call, and then it's his obligation to determine whose responsibility it is, and let that person know. Either refer the caller to that person, or let the tenant or the operator know you need to call this person and work out whatever the
So
resolution is.
Is the issue like the sound or the noise?
Smell,
From
probably.
The paint, the
Odors.
fumes, the
Yeah.
noise.
Wow.
See, look at the city ordinance.
Yeah,
is
that
like-
Yeah.
Yeah, you,
Well,
the resident
well,
could
we
call,
had to take, basically, we had to take them to court. So it was a big issue,
Yeah.
but
but you should call, in a case like that, where you talk to them and they don't stop, call the police. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, so I was just wondering
Call
if there
the
was.
Environmental Protection Agency.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Washington State.
We had to
Environmental.
basically had to get an environmental lawyer
Oh,
to
okay.
sue
Wow.
the city. because
So
they
you
were
knew the
all-
answer already, right?
Well, no, I didn't have a property manager, so I was just wondering if
Well,
they
if
did.
there's no property manager, then deal with the tenant, deal with the person who's operating the business illegally or.
Right, I just wanted to know if there was one in that situation, would they be responsible?
No, the tenant would be responsible for doing something like that. And each lease, a lease in a situation like that would specify what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. I mentioned before that there's such a thing as a nuisance clause.
Mhm.
Like one tenant cannot cause a nuisance or damage to another tenant, otherwise they're in default of their lease.
Who determines what nuisance is? One place is playing music next door and they don't like the kind of music of these guys.
Well,
It's not truly a nuisance, but
the property manager would have to be like the arbiter,
property manager, yeah.
the mediator. But some leases specify you cannot play your music louder than X number of decibels or something like that, or you cannot cause discomfort or cause a nuisance for your neighbors. And if the neighbor's complaining about it, it's a nuisance, okay? Just like a restaurant that doesn't clean up their space well enough and they have rats or flies or whatever, and the next door neighbor is complaining about it, that tenant's responsible, that restaurant tenant is responsible for cleaning up enough, having a pest control come in and take care of it. Okay? All right, what else is involved with safety? Water
Trash,
outside of the space, if
Water,
water gets
sewer.
running on the parking lot or something and it freezes, that's a safety issue. Eric, what was your
trash,
trash? Yeah, definitely, that can be a hazard.
Biohazard,
Say again?
biohazards,
Biohazards, yeah.
bodily fluids.
Things like kids riding bicycles or skateboards and stuff like that can be a safety issue. That's why most shopping centers don't allow that kind of stuff. The other reason for not allowing it is, you know, if a kid jumps his skateboard off the curb and falls and lands on the back of his head and splits it open, you're gonna get sued. And, you know, parents don't care. Now, my kid, that's public property, we can, you know, they can use the sidewalk. No, it's private property. Well, were there any signs saying we couldn't skateboard? No. Okay. You know, that kind of stuff. You have to look for that, all these kinds of things. I'll just run down a laundry list here and some of the things that are really important we can talk about a little bit more. Roof access ladders.
I
You've
love
seen
that.
shopping centers with the metal ladders on the exterior of the building. You'd be surprised how many people, kids generally, or thieves or vandals, use those ladders. So you have to have some kind of a covering or locking device so that they can't climb up the things. And I thought, everybody knows that Target stores have those big red concrete balls out.
Oh,
in
yeah,
front.
Mhm.
yeah.
I thought, what were they thinking? You know, but I don't think any kid has ever slipped off of one of those and busted his head open on the sidewalk.
Right.
Or, you know, somebody walking along not paying attention, fall over the thing.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd be gone. You know, they would be something else there besides those big red balls. But that's the kind of stuff that you have to look at for safety. And if it's a major tenant like Target, that's their responsibility. But believe me, if somebody falls over a Target red ball, they're gonna call you as a property manager. And if somebody sues you over something like that, they'll probably sue the property management as well, the owner of the property and everybody else, so. Okay, traffic control is a big one, speed bumps and stop signs and turn signs, and normally you don't have signal lights or anything like that, but the striping on the parking lot, the center line is important. Because if it's not there, somebody's gonna drive a little bit in the other lane and have an accident. Okay, were the markings adequate? No, Your Honor, okay. Yes,
Another question. Okay, like during Christmas time,
Yep.
like South Center has those little traffic people that
Yep.
do all that. Is that the
little
property?
traffic people.
Yeah, is that the property manager's responsibility to get that organized?
Yeah. That's part of your traffic control, and you know, in a place like South Center or Bellevue Square or any major shopping center, in the Christmas time, you know what you're gonna face. So you get your staff together a month ahead of time, and you figure it all out. And you add more security, you talk to your security people about traffic control, and roaming through the parking lot. You know, sure enough, there's gonna be somebody carrying too many bags out to their car and stumble and fall, and all their stuff is all over the parking lot. Somebody's gotta get there to help them. Make sure the area is safe so they can pick everything up, get it in their car and drive away. Eric?
when Ally mentioned about the shoreline Costco, I was thinking about trying to leave via the west side. The design of that parking lot is a little bit difficult.
You mean here?
Yeah, the shoreline Costco near
Oh, the
Ann Arbor-
Costco?
Ann Arbor Village.
It is.
Oh, okay.
You try going out the west side. There's a couple of speed bumps, and then there's that customer crossing. It's real difficult.
It is.
to go through there at full speed. That's why I usually I try real hard to slow down. But
How hard do you try to slow down? You slow down, right?
Yeah. But
Well,
that place, the design of that place.
yeah, some things, you know, the older shopping centers and commercial buildings that have been designed and built in the last, 10 years ago, don't accommodate the 53-foot trucks, and they don't accommodate the kind of traffic that we have nowadays. And people don't pay attention the way they used to, because they've got their iPhone, or they're texting somebody, or they got their earphones in, and they're talking to their friends. So
In Oregon, yeah, it is.
a property manager needs to look very carefully at all aspects of the property, from the parking lot to the roof of the building, and everything in between. Even leaves on a sidewalk when they're wet can be slippery like banana peel. So you gotta make sure that you don't have that kind of stuff.
I have lots of questions too, because you're just bringing up all this stuff. So traffic control is when you were mentioning that, speed bumps. Now, because Tacoma Mall and Factory, those are big malls. So if they have those, has anybody ever complained that they knocked their car out of alignment on the bumps? Are you really careful? Do you make sure what?
Or the lady who called me because her brand new Mercedes tore the exhaust system out when she drove over the speed bump. Okay, how fast were you going? Well, I was going the speed limit. Speed limit for the freeway or speed limit for the shopping center? It's 15 miles an hour in the shopping center. How fast were you going? Well, I might have been going a little bit faster than that. And is your car standard, or is it modified? Is it lower down like some cars are?
Yeah.
No? Well, what you do then is you do a little bit of research. You find out how low the car is. I took my car up there and drove across that same speed bump that she drove across. She had to be going 50 in order for the car to bounce and something like that. And so, you do a little bit of research, talk to the police, whatever, and go see if you can see any scars in that asphalt in the speed bump or whatever.
Okay.
Because sometimes people just try to get money out of it.
Okay.
And then you respond.
And then on the paint, because you're talking about this like parking and I have two more questions. So painting lines, when you were at Tacoma, or did you ever consider, or maybe you guys did, carrying like the paint so maintenance would go out, and like if lines became faded, and to restripe them?
Yeah, you can do that, but
or not? Would you
know how
not
big
recommend
Tacoma
it?
Mall is?
Yeah, I know how big
They
it
have
is, so I didn't know.
They have 22 acres of roof
Yeah.
at Tacoma Mall.
So I mean, you have to rent it out, but I don't know
So
if anybody
you-
ever thought it was a cost-effective measure.
Well, you could do that, but you normally contract it out to do
Okay.
it once a year or every other year, depending upon the traffic and the weather and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But we were talking about that today, as a matter of fact. There's no regulation or requirement for you to mark out parking stalls.
Okay.
You know, the city's not gonna shut you down because you don't have nice striping, but who will shut you down? Your
Customers. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
If they don't wanna come because their car they don't know where to park and there's no parking space and
Or you get door dings.
they always get dinged, or if somebody runs into them, they won't come to your shopping center, so. Next question.
Okay, that's good. You're
That's
done.
it?
No,
Oh,
parking
okay.
enforcement. So,
Parking enforcement, yeah.
so when, like it's marked handicap or you
Yeah.
have the red fire lines or whatever, can mall security issue a ticket?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. Visually marked.
For handicap,
Or do you call
definitely.
for
Yeah.
handicap, or if it's
Yeah.
like the fire lane, or do you call
Yeah,
the
fire
police
lane,
department?
you could call the police on something like that.
Okay, but you still can issue them a
Yeah.
ticket.
But
Okay.
a lot of times,
Or warning.
you have to realize, they might respond, they see a ticket and drive away.
Hmm.
You probably will never get paid for it.
Right.
But at least you got the point across. Just thinking of some point I was gonna make and then went away. It'll come to me.
Can't chase them down in your F-250 and we're at a mile.
Then that brings I just thought of something else because you answered the questions that I had. But towing.
Say again?
So towing. So like if that
Towing,
happens,
You see-
right?
Well, if
And then
somebody,
you have a contract with the tow company,
Yeah,
and
you
then they
can
come
tow
out. Okay. And once they're hooked up, good to go, even if they come running out.
that depends, because you're gonna pay the towing company one way or the other.
Oh,
They hook it up.
Once they hook up, you're gonna
Oh.
pay the towing company.
Right.
So-
Wait, the property manager?
Yeah.
pays the towing company?
yeah.
But that's
You don't
an
know.
operating expense, so, yeah, the property manager pays that involved.
So the towing guy is getting the money out of you when you come to get your car and is getting it out of
Well,
the doors?
no. If the towing company comes and gets your car and takes it to an impound lot, then the owner of the car pays.
Right.
What I was answering was, if somebody comes up running out and say, that's my car, and they're there, you probably wouldn't make the customer pay for the towing, because you want the customer to come back again. So then the property manager would just say, okay, we'll pay the fee.
Wow. Okay.
That's, yeah, whatever the towing, because the towing company has a contractual agreement with the property manager. And they're gonna make enough money over time, they're not, they'd probably say, okay, $50 is a standard rate for us coming out and not towing anybody. Because sometimes you call them and when they get out there, the car's gone.
Right.
So, sometimes if it's a Tacoma Mall situation, they wouldn't charge you at all, because they make enough money off you, they wanna feed your service company. So, no more questions.
But
Yeah,
this,
one more question.
but this is really funny. I was at Wajimaya the other day in Bellevue, and you mentioned about the roof access, and that's why I wrote it down, because there was actually somebody on the roof above Starbucks. This is in Bellevue. There's like a Wajimaya and a Total liquor store, and it's by the
Okay,
Nissan.
there's somebody up on the roof.
Right, on their cell phone.
What?
Yeah,
Was
just chatting. I don't know who it was,
Could've
if
been-
it was a worker or not.
Yeah.
But so you brought that up because you'd think, oh yeah, and until you mentioned about the access, the roof ladder
Well,
access.
one of the things that's involved in safety
Yeah, I
and
did look-
security
Was it? Yeah,
in commercial properties is, how do you
Of Starbucks.
control your
Yeah.
property?
right.
How do you know who's on it? Normally, you wanna have contractors that let you know when they're coming on the property, and just a courtesy call to your office to let somebody know, or let security know that they're there. A funny thing happened, when I was managing properties for Kimco, large company. They wanted us to do what they called ID plans for all the properties. That meant they hired some company out of Florida. People went through and they counted up all the fire hydrants, they counted up all the storm drains and all the lights and all the, everything, and put all that data on a plan. And then gave us a book for each shopping center with landscape irrigation, parking lot lighting, stop signs, all the stuff that was important, plumbing, water fixtures, all that stuff. Well, the people that were hired by this company to do this survey was an older couple in Washington that lived somewhere else. They came up here in a big RV towing a car, and they had 3 dogs or something like that. And I got a report that there's a guy walking around here with dogs all the time, letting his dogs, do their thing in the landscaping and all that. And that person didn't call and let us know that he was going to be there. So I called my security guy, said, and this was during a time that he was not on duty. I said, could you drive out to the pavilions and find out what's going on out there? Sure enough, it was the guy who was hired to do that survey. But people will do dumb things You have to have control of your property, you have to know what's going on, so you ask the tenants, when you talk to the tenants, you say, you know, if you see anything out in the parking lot, or you see something strange, call me. Let me make the determination of whether I can do anything about it, or should do anything about it or not. But you want people to give you information so you can act on it. And keep your property safe, keep your property clean and well taken care of so that it's a value, it retains its value. It doesn't become a dumping ground or a place where hoodlums can roam around and scare customers away. Okay, let's wrap this up. Safety includes looking for all trip and fall hazards, making sure your ADA signage is there and visible, the markers for your handicap parking stalls. Signage is required on the sidewalks for the parking stalls or in the parking area where you have your handicap parking stalls. And those truncated domes, the yellow mats that they glue down to the sidewalk ramps so that people with, like, in a wheelchair or blind person can tell that they're on a ramp at the edge of the sidewalk or whatever, ready to go on a crosswalk. Those are required. That's what they're for. We talked about bicycles, skateboards. Trash was mentioned by Eric. Dumpsters. You'd be surprised how many people get hurt in and around the dumpsters. They're a big, heavy piece of equipment. And nowadays, a lot of them have those plastic doors that are pretty light. So you'll find somebody flipping it all the way up, and there'll be somebody in the back doing something they shouldn't and get dinged on the head. Unfortunately, it's not the big metal doors like they used to be. But all kinds of safety hazards there. And if you have dumpsters near restaurants, there's going to be grease and oil and food dropped around there, so it's going to be slick.
And rodents.
Rodents. Were you here when I told you about the rats out at Frontier Village?
Yeah.
They didn't get
Yeah.
all the time.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
Underneath the McDonald's, I think.
Yeah, that's a hazard too. Roof access we talked about. Okay, so even light poles, you know, you'd be surprised. Some kid's going to try to climb a light pole. You gotta have people looking for that. Your security's out there, obviously, to try to discourage that. But those are safety hazards. You need to look for that. Inside the building, elevators, escalators, and stairs. They need to be clean, marked, lit, so that people don't have a safety issue. Restrooms need to be clean and dry, floors as much as possible. Inside the space, or inside the shopping center or office building, if there's a spill on the floor, you gotta get it taken care of. Your janitor crew, or your maintenance people, or your security needs to be prepared to clean up those spills and put a sign down there if there's a wet floor, because that's a safety hazard. Doors and glass. I've been managing properties for 23 years, and I was down in South Center area in the Parkway Supercenter, talking to a contractor about some of the work he was doing, and we had the tenant, police, and the city inspector, and me with all my experience. I was standing by a doorway that looked like I could see right to the outside. And I was talking about something, and I turned around to say, let's go outside and look at it, and I walked right into the glass. Boom. It was so clean.
I've done that
And
before too.
I didn't realize that it was glass.
Feels silly.
No, I didn't sue them. But I sure felt stupid. But people do that.
Yeah.
Everybody saw me.
Especially in a big mall, you know, there's lights and they're talking to their friends, and the next thing you know, they go into the, whatever, you know, Victoria's Secret or you know, who knows, gift shop, whatever, and bang, they hit this glass, because everything's glass. You know, all these displays and all that, you kind of get lost in it sometimes.
Or you can have a sliding glass door, and that's clearly visible in the wall, and somebody walks right through it, and
Mhm.
boom, and then they sue you.
Yeah,
True
that's
story.
right. Such things as fire sprinklers and
happened.
extinguishers and things like that, that one's out of the way. You normally wouldn't hit that fire extinguisher. But if there wasn't that section of glass there and that fire extinguisher, the wall was closer to the door, that would be a safety hazard.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, if that thing got knocked off and became unserviceable or something like that, that would cause problems if you had a fire and the thing didn't work. It just, common sense stuff that you have to look for. Wires, how many wires can people trip over if they're in a store, if there's a wire running across the floor? You can't have that. Now, it's not your responsibility in a shopping center or in an office building necessarily inside the space, but you should tell the tenants about it. Make sure they're aware that if somebody trips on it, that's on their dime. But that person that tripped would probably sue the property manager too.
So who's responsible if I owned a concrete cutting company and we ran wires through, and because it was residential or a commercial place, to be smart, we decided to put 2x4s along the sides of it so people wouldn't trip over that.
Yeah, but
And,
they
you know,
tripped over
and they tripped over the 2x4s, and it was like, so, but we were hired by the company, so the people went after the company instead. But is that something that the property manager needs to make sure of, or how do you?
Technically, the
Or who's
property
hired?
manager would not be responsible for that. It would be the contractor
Okay.
and the contractor's insurance.
Yeah,
But
we got
that's
lucky.
just an example of how people don't pay attention, or people will, if they're set on going from here to there to that store,
That's all they see.
that's all they care about.
Yeah, this was, I mean, I sprayed it orange, I mean,
Yeah,
it was ridiculous. But
what you really need to be totally safe is flashing neon and barricades, and a glass bubble covering it or something. It's crazy. You just have to use your common sense and take all the precautions that you can. A reasonable person looking at a situation. You should ensure that contractors that come on your property to do work set up cones and barricades and things like that, to keep customers from tripping through their workspace. But you can't preclude everything. But if you take the steps that a reasonable person would take, you usually don't have to worry about it. Okay? Yes, Terry.
Speaking of it, because owners are usually liable, but let's say that you own commercial property and your property manager isn't up to snuff and not performing those safety
Yeah,
hazards,
okay.
where Personal
That's the
liability.
owner's fault then, or the owner's issue. You get rid of that person and get a.
oh, it is. So, but as a property manager, oh, never mind.
Well, I mean,
As a point, what I'm thinking is because you know how you have
property
insurance
manager-
coverage,
a
you have
property manager could get fired,
Right.
let's say, by the person that hired him,
right.
and still get sued.
And still get sued. Okay, now so this is where we're going. Now, is there insurance that you can take out as a property manager?
I was wondering that.
Probably.
Because
but
like
you probably
police
couldn't afford it.
officers, teachers, you have
Lloyd's
certain,
of London would probably have to.
yeah. But do you know what I mean? Like an extra precaution as a property manager,
But normally,
or if you are doing your job.
leases are written in such a way that, if such and such happens, or a property manager's contract would say, you'll not be held liable for lawsuits while
Okay.
doing your job unless it's gross neglect or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay.
And most property managers, most people who are hired for a job like that are gonna have enough common sense to know that they gotta do their job. They gotta do it at least well enough to keep somebody from getting killed on their property or whatever.
Or if they were doing their job and then the owner said, "Screw that, I'm going to make them pay."
Whatever.
I thought I'd throw two scenarios in there.
So
Okay,
the owner would make the property manager pay?
Yeah, if the owner could go after the property manager. to recoup
I
some
suppose
loss.
they could. I had a problem once at Factoria. The owner wanted us to redo the landscaping and remove some of the trees. So I called the locator, and they showed us where stuff was, but they were only a locator for public utilities or something, I forget exactly, but, so when I said, okay, go ahead and remove the trees, the guy dug in there, and the power went out.
Oh, so yeah, power, gas.
Well, that cost about $50,000.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the owner was mad, and I was terrified and angry and upset, but I called the
Due
locator.
diligence, yeah.
I just should have called another locator to locate the power line. The insurance covered
Does
that.
the locator take on some of the liability since they didn't find it, or?
I don't think so,
So he is-
but it was, it was a tense time, and I thought, I'll never do that again.
Well, we just learned your lesson, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's it, yeah.
I'll dig them out by hand before I. So, then, let's talk a little bit about emergency planning. Obviously, you have to have a plan for how you're gonna react in case of a fire. Now, obviously, you're not gonna be fighting the fire unless you have a fire extinguisher or something like that, or your sprinklers don't go off. But safety is of utmost concern. Get the people out, don't have people be heroes unless it's saving somebody's life or something like that. Don't try to save merchandise or the building, let the firefighters do that. Get your people out, get them accounted for, and help out in any way you can as a management staff or whatever. Make sure the tenants are out and their questions are answered or whatever, but call the fire department, call the police, let the professionals do their job. But you should have some sort of a plan, practice it, make sure everybody on your staff knows about it, who does what, who calls who, all that kind of stuff. I mentioned before that I had to come up with an emergency plan for flooding. The Hanson Dam had a problem, the Green River flood was predicted to happen. That's a pain in the butt, but you have to do it. Because if you don't, and something happens, and you get sued, you're in trouble. So, emergency planning is,
So do you do like a child abduction plan too? I mean, like,
that's.
Oh, that's a good
I-
question.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot in property management, but never happened, and not that it couldn't. That brought to mind something I'll never forget. At Tacoma Mall, our security found a child in a car, locked in a car. And, we frantic, we got the kid out, had the kid in my office. Kid was crying, we gave him candy, whatever. We found the mother, and she thought we were doing something we shouldn't have done. I wanted to slap her silly, but I didn't. We called the police.
Yeah.
How old was the mother? The kid?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember. She was upset that we, got into her business. Sure.
Breaking into her property.
Yeah. Oh, you opened my car.
Wow.
The kid was crying,
Wow.
it was
Yeah.
hot outside,
It's like that kid Sky,
It wasn't a
right?
baby.
That mother, she left her kid in there to go get gas.
Yeah.
I hate that lady.
Yeah, I know.
Ridiculous.
Oh, I know.
I
Who
can't-
would ever,
Those,
yeah, you,
those things are emergencies that you need to talk about, plan for, think about. Get your people ready. You need conscientious people who are aware and alert and think about things like that. And security and your maintenance people need to be trained and advised to look for those things and call somebody, when they see it. Yes,
Would you recommend that your tenants have an emergency plan too?
yes.
I mean, and then
Sure.
make sure that you're in alignment or they're in alignment with yours and vice versa?
That would be good. Depends on how big your property is, and, if you have small properties, you talk to the tenants, make sure they know when a fire happens, get the heck out. Some Some spaces don't even have back doors, okay? They're so small and they're not required to have a back door. You make sure everybody knows you can't run to the back of the building if there's a fire. You gotta get out the front, that kind of stuff. And, you know, the requirements for marking fire extinguishers. I'm surprised there's not an exit sign on the door, to be honest with you.
Oh, right.
Because all commercial properties require a green exit sign, front and back. Those sorts of things are important. And you brought up a good point. A lot of tenants, like especially in retail, all they care about is selling their merchandise. They don't care what happens in the rest of the world around them. You know? As long as they're selling, they're happy. But they have to worry about safety things and the safety of their employees. I know what I was going to talk about when we talked about the parking enforcement. The worst people for parking in commercial properties are the tenants. The employees that work in the shopping center or work in the office building or work in the industrial park. They need to park in a designated area. But you will find, you know, the assistant manager of the Gap store parking right in front of the store. And when you talk to them about, well, it's, you know, I can park here because I work here. But you know how valuable that parking stall is? You want to pay me to park there? I'll be glad to charge you $48,000 a year to park there. Because that's how valuable that stall is, because that's how much one parking stall produces in a year with all the customers who come and spend their money here. So that's a property manager's concern. You should have a designated parking area for employees, and you have your security out there checking. Usually they can tell after they've worked there a while who the employees are and what kind of car they drive and where they park. Now you can't, some leases will let you fine them, but you normally don't do that. You want happy tenants too, but you can certainly threaten to kick their teeth in or something, or let the air out of their tires, or tow their car if they don't park in the employee parking lot. I'm kidding, of course, with that, but the best thing that I figured out to do was to say, okay, I will let you park in that parking stall right in front of your space if you're willing to pay me the $48,000 a year to park there. Well, no, okay, don't park there. Because they realize after you explain to them how valuable that is, that they better not park there or their owner's going to kick their butts or get rid of them. So.
There's one thing, you have to look up, because one of the buildings has glass awnings.
Yes.
And you didn't even think one of the panels was broken, and fortunately nothing happened, but looking up this stuff.
Everything from the parking lot, ground surface, to the roof deck, and the parking lot lights. God forbid the parking lot light pole would fall down and kill somebody, but it could happen. In my 22 years, I had to replace 2 parking lot light poles that got hit by vehicles. Fortunately, nobody got hurt by those. But even one company wanted us to have a safety test, stress test on all the parking lot light poles. And I said, you know, we can do that, but I've only, in 20 years, I've only had 2 parking lot light poles that came down, and they came down because of big trucks hitting them. So if you want us to spend the money, fine, we'll do it. But all those things are safety and emergency considerations that you need to think about, plan for, have your people look for when you're managing property. Okay?
I have one more question. The awnings was a really good point. Now, is that common area or is that tenant issue?
What's that?
Awnings.
That's
Or
common
dependent.
area usually.
Okay.
Unless it's a standalone store or something that has awning,
Yeah. Okay.
glass awning.
Because you know, like in downtown corridors, everybody has like a different awning on a
Yeah.
building
That
sometimes,
would
and then
probably be individual tenant.
individual, and
Or
then you
or
see
if
other
it's
ones
a-
where they all have black awnings.
if it's a building that's managed by a property manager,
Yeah.
then that would be a property manager's
Okay.
responsibility. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about budgets.
Well, I
Money.
must be honest, I thought we were only gonna do 6 and 12, so I thought.
That's okay, I don't care what you thought.
I know,
You need to read the syllabus.
I did, and then I realized that 6 and 12 and 10?
All right. This is not gonna be a painful drill, but I wanna just give you the basics first, and then we'll get together in groups and come up with some budget ideas, plan a budget. Budgets are your financial roadmap, your plan. Budgets are not law. You can't get thrown in jail for, well, you could if you're stealing money or whatever, but if you use a budget as a planning tool and a tool to help you determine exactly where you are financially for operating your commercial property. It's really an estimate and actual historical figures blended together. Because just like in doing your personal home budget or whatever, you don't know what's gonna happen in December or October when you're thinking about how you're gonna spend your money in January. And you don't know whether you're gonna get a raise or not at work, or whether one of your kids is gonna get sick and you're gonna have to pay a babysitter when they're out of school or whatever. You have to estimate what you're gonna spend, or how much money you're gonna need for such and such. Now, in a commercial property budget process, I see, Natalie, you wanna hold that up? Is that,
This is a budget.
that's a budget, okay. Hold it up so everybody can see it, if you don't mind. That's a pretty typical commercial property type budget. It looks like this. There's a line on the left-hand side for categories of income or expenses. And there's a whole laundry list of those that you have to have data for, okay? And then the body of the budget is the months of the year and a total, and then usually a comment section on the end here. What would a comment section be for?
Clarify things that might not
Okay.
make sense.
Also a historical record. If you know that, like in August you have zero income for some reason, you put down 3 stores will be vacating in August, or their leases are up or something like that. And that's why the income is gonna start being lower in that month and all the way through the rest of the year. Or if you have an operating expense, like you're gonna do striping and seal coating of the parking lot, and it's another $8,000 more than the normal expenses for the month. You put a note over here, asphalt, striping and seal coating, blah, blah, blah. So that when you look at this thing during the year, you don't have to try to remember what it is that caused that jump in expenses or whatever. And then 2 years from now, when you're doing your next budget, or a year from now, when you're doing the next budget, you can look at that and you say, okay, we did that then, and we needed so much money, this is what we, this is our total for that category for that month. Let's increase that by 5% or whatever for next year, or we know we don't have to seal coat this year, so that's a savings of $7,000 for that property. So our total will be this. It's an estimate and a forecast of projected expenses, and also adding in or considering the actual expenses from historical data from last year's budget. What did we spend then? What are we gonna have to spend now? And it's a very valuable tool. Businesses, all businesses should operate on budget. This company I've been working with in Auburn for almost 2 years, I finally got them convinced to operate with a budget. For 15 years, the owner's been running that business out of his checkbook.
Oh.
And they did $8 million in sales last year. About time they came up with a plan and operated that way so that they can do it professionally. But the property manager must know how to operate a budget. If you don't, you're not gonna be doing your job right. Okay? Now,
How long did it take you to learn?
I knew it as soon as I was born. No, actually, just like everything else, this is common sense. It took me about maybe a month or two. But I was fortunate in that I worked for 4 months in a temporary job, and the guy that I was working for taught me as much as he could about property management, because he wanted to make me a property manager. But then I got hired to manage the Cone Mall. Then I got thrown in the frying pan big time. Yeah. Now, what you do is you go through your files, and you talk to the people that have been working there. If there's an accountant in your staff, that's great. Get to know that accountant. Tell me what's in the budget. Let's talk about budgets. If there's an operations person or a property assistant who's worked on the budget, get to know that person. Go through the budgets. Understand what's in it. Now what I'd like to do is divide up into 2 equal groups. So let's see, we have 4 here and 6 here. So Michael, you want to just move over here, and we got 5 and 5. And kind of get together if you would, so we can talk to each other without screaming.
Well, this is an estrogen heavy group, and that's a testosterone heavy group.
How do you know that?
Oh, look at me.
I know. Well, I know you're going to be drowned out. No, I know. There's 1 woman and we have 1 man here.
I'll bring my feminist side.
I know, there you go.
And my question is, so what?
Yeah.
I
And how
know.
does that change?
Yeah, how does that change? How does that change your responsibility as a property manager? I'll just give you some,
Make sure gender, I know. Gender equality.
some scratch paper to use to
That's funny.
write out your budget if you want.
Hey, and look who's real.
Oh, wait, I haven't told you what.
Okay. I know, I was thinking this. I was like, wait, what?
What were supposed to
Not listening.
Paper you can use so you don't have to.
Hey, but we still have to say, you always gotta start somewhere.
Okay, let's do this.
I think you look so cute with your hearts today.
Oh, that is cute.
Each group has a neighborhood shopping center,
Okay.
Okay.
and you're both gonna work on the same thing. I just don't wanna, I don't wanna have one big group. I want more people to get involved in it, so we'll do the same thing for each group. You have a neighborhood shopping center with about 25 tenants in it, and a Safeway store, a Target store, and a pad building that has a restaurant in it.
What's a pad building?
That's a separate building out in the parking lot. You know, Applebee's is sitting out in the parking lot. Okay?
What was it?
Pad.
Pad
He calls it-
building of
yeah.
what?
A pad building. It's a separate
restaurant.
restaurant. It's Applebee's.
Who's in the book?
Oh, we're gonna do
Yeah, it's in the
Apple.
book. You read the book, you know. Okay.
Okay.
Now-
Under chapter 10.
Now, what I want you to do is do an income budget and an operating budget. Just like I have up here, income and expenses. Expenses and operating budget, that's what it costs you to operate that property. Now, use your imagination. You don't have to write out all 25 tenants. But in an income budget, what you need to do is think about how much rent does each tenant pay each month, and that would go in your monthly matrix for income. And then what else would you have to consider when you're figuring out the income of the tenants? What leases are expiring in that year?
Okay.
Okay, so their rent stops unless we can renew them. So you'd have to figure out which ones you plan on renewing and at what rent and who has rent increases. Okay, getting pretty complex already, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is getting stressful.
But think about that. Okay, think about that. Spend a little bit of time trying to figure out how you would do all that stuff with income. And then after let's take about 10 minutes or so and talk amongst yourselves and figure out what's important and what you have to keep track of and what kind of data you need for the income portion with 25 tenants, 2 anchor stores, and an Applebee's. And then we'll talk about it after about 10 minutes. And then we'll focus on an operating budget for the next segment.
Oh, good timing. Let us figure out the budget.
I'll put this all.
Yep. Come on now, because it's on you.
Oh, boy.
You're the spokesperson.
Have one person
That is
do a
funny.
spreadsheet or whatever.
Oh boy, okay.
I've never done a budget, have you?
I've never done a budget,
Here, nobody can read what
but I have looked at
Think about this now.
expense accounts on
Just
like
think like this. Okay.
QuickBooks.
The anchor
Okay.
stores.
I'm not
are
an
gonna be there for the whole
accountant.
year.
Okay.
I've just kind of
You
fudged
know-
with
you know what their
looking
income
at
is,
those
what
types
their
of
rent
accounts.
that they're
Okay.
paying you.
So I was just trying to think, oh my God, what do I remember?
One thing
Not
you start
very
with.
much.
If someone told me to do this at a job, that would be like, you know what, I can't work
No,
here.
you can't. Actually, he's right. It seems complex at first, but when you start doing
So you add that
every
in.
month, every
Okay.
week, every day is
And
repetitive tasks.
What your-
So
So
what
if your job
budget
is to
should
enter
look
in
like
certain
income
things
is
that
you
you
have a separate
constantly
sheet
keep
that
up
would have
with,
all those tenants
like the bills
listed,
that come in,
what their rent
and then the
per month
programs let
is,
you do
when their
reports. You don't have to
expiration
think
date
about that
is,
stuff. Once you repetitively do the same thing every day,
odds and ends
every
or whatever.
week, every month, running
Smaller tenants,
reports,
if you know that
is actually, it
somebody's
starts to become
struggling
really
and
familiar
you're
because
not
it
gonna
never
renew their
changes.
lease,
Okay.
And it gets really
that's
boring.
zero
So
from
you're just
whatever
basically
time
like,
the lease ends.
the challenge is making
year.
sure you're accurate when you're
Or
copying down numbers
Normally,
from
how you
like
budget is you
bills
plan like
or like let's say you send me a check,
hopefully
but this
3
month
months,
maybe
but
you
as
talked
much
to
as
somebody
6
that said
months
sure
of
you can pay half on the
dead time
15th,
and zero
and
rent,
if I know how much rent you pay
unless
but
you
I'm
have
not really
active
looking
leasing going on and you
and
have
I don't notice
the
that
possibility
it's
of
missing a
leasing up
zero,
with
Right,
space.
so you have to be really careful about that kind of thing,
Okay.
just being
Just
cognizant,
double check.
double checking and cognizant
can
of
estimate
everything
it,
that comes in,
Because
Okay.
but the programs are
the
really
reason I'm
set
having
up
you think
for
about this stuff is because
that repetitive, you learn it.
So it's just
there's no way
basically
you're
like
gonna know
Excel,
all this
kind
stuff
of.
when you put
Kind
your
of,
budget
there's
together.
different ones, there's Excel,
you've gotta
there's
have,
QuickBooks, there's other like
an accountant or
programs,
property
depending on what kind of
assistant
business you
or
have.
somebody in
Okay.
operations
So you would
in your
learn it, but at
staff
first it
or
might be
corporate
like,
staff
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That has
Okay.
data.
So what do we got here? We got
Okay,
safety
so
We've
we
got
target.
25 tenants,
Right.
2
You'll know
anchors,
that,
and
and
1
you'll know
Applebee.
You'll have documents like,
Safeway
the leasing report.
and
that will
Target
show each tenant
could be the
when
anchors.
their lease
Yeah.
started, how much they pay.
They would
square
get
feet
the
they have,
most consistent
and
income.
when their
Most
lease
rent, yeah.
expires,
right, and they would probably sign the longest leases.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If they're not successful, you don't want
And
to
then it
renew
said
them,
something
you
about,
can let their lease expire, you can
By the way,
use that
chapter
money
10
too.
is all about budgeting, so
And-
that's what I'm on right now.
Yeah.
Take those reports.
In another chapter, it talked
analyze
about
them,
renewing
and you take the
leases
data off that
with
you need for
commercial
that.
like once a year. So every
Rents that are
6
coming in
months,
and rent
even if they
increases,
have a lease, let's say for like 5
expectations
years, do you think every year you should review like,
for the year, and
you know, because you do
divide it
like
up by
income
months.
statements, right? Every week or something they have
That's
to, or every month they
your
have to
basic
Yeah, they have
hand
to
in.
report
Did I
to
just
you.
kick you?
Right.
Yeah.
We also-
So it seems
I
like
did. Okay, so what do you guys?
every
Is that
6
Okay, so
months
we
or every
decided
year
plan
should
to
definitely be
Safeway
keeping
and
track,
Target
even though their
are
lease
gonna
might
be the
expire in
uh,
5
Anchors.
years or 7
anchors
years.
and the most rent, right?
Or I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but
And
what
what
do you
about
think?
the
I
pound?
don't
Oh, so the
know
longest lease.
like how,
Yeah,
what about
like
the,
renewing
Not
leases?
Applebee's.
Applebee's.
I mean,
Because if you
Why?
sign them up for
Because
5
they usually have their
years,
own
then
little building, it's
And
all
they're
decorated.
open longer hours too.
But
Yeah.
Applebee's,
Yeah.
but Safeway and Target compared to
Well, you want to make sure
Applebee's
they
Uh-huh.
stay.
would have a
Yeah.
more
You,
consistent
as a property
income.
manager, of course, you want to get more money
Okay.
and get them to stay for at least
sure?
the
Done this
same amount of
before?
time.
Property
But they have to have
management?
some incentive.
Not
So
property
maybe
management. I've
like-
done budgeting before, and I've
there's
you
lots
have?
of other
Well,
things I
write the
can't think. Maybe they
budget.
get a little bit of free
I've
rent
done
before they
some
have to start
budget-
committing on
budgeting
that
and
next,
some bookkeeping before.
you know, lease
Oh, okay,
term.
then you know what you're doing.
Or they
Okay.
get maybe some
Write it.
extra features that renew.
So are we
Right.
having a
Some-
percentage
Check
rent
the
too?
town.
So we have
Right? It's
base
like
rent,
dated.
right?
yeah, it does.
Maybe
So everybody
they,
gets base rent.
so I was thinking, okay, if we're
And then are we gonna do percentage rents too? Which are,
oh god, that's good, Terry.
To help us
What
plan the
chapter are you
budget
on,
for
Tim?
next year.
What are you looking at?
346.
Estimate or forecast.
You mean 436?
Yeah, what did I say?
346.
Thank you,
Oh,
436.
Oh yeah, I was there. 446.
Yeah, it has it
436.
on
436.
Base rent.
Yeah, percentage rent,
reimbursement.
We call that
the income from
forecast.
tenants for such items as.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
percentage
insurance
rent.
policy. Yeah.
Budget that's produced for the following year is a combination of
Who do we want to give the percentage rent to?
inflation and forecast.
Target, Safeway, right?
Effect of what you hope
They're the
for.
ones that are gonna go probably over
That's why,
So we can
that's
get that,
another
right,
reason why the
Terry?
budget is not.
What?
the percentage rent.
Yeah.
It's gonna
So if they
change.
go over that, we
Safeway,
can,
Target, we can rely on those to go over, right?
That's part of.
sometimes,
and if
or
they
should we
do-
do it for everybody? Percentage rents.
Yeah, everybody,
Yeah,
get the most.
Well, that's a
because
separate type
some
of
tenants
budget.
won't ever get it, so, but if
Right.
they
Normally,
do,
the tenants don't
And
have to pay
it's my understanding that if they do not get beyond the natural break point, they just pay the base rent.
Right. they pay their base rent, yeah.
I see this thing on
What thing?
$3.99.
$3.99? $3.99? Okay.
$3.99. There's just an example of like a cash versus
Since you brought up
there's like
capital.
actual budget entries.
But
But it kinda looks like that.
Trying to figure out how we.
Mhm.
Okay, and you know how you do that? You,
Oh. It says
Well, it
income
does kind of
and
look like it.
expensive. So the income would be like
depending upon how leases are written, everybody
would be
pays.
the base rent,
pro-rata
percentage
share of
rent,
operating costs
Right.
and parking lot.
And then the
parking income.
Right,
That's all
parking,
income.
yeah.
Right.
Or you
Yep.
collect 10 cents a square foot from every
Miscellaneous income,
Parking,
merchants
parking income.
association,
Yeah, there was a
fund
parking income.
reimbursement.
Yeah, and
to
436.
tenants. So that's
Major part of the building that needs to be torn
So those are like
down.
6 things that we get income from.
Right.
Parking
And then
lot,
our expenses
well,
would
some of the
be,
anchor stores would, and some of the tenants, if you know.
You're talking about like a money you're taking from the common area.
Yeah, depending on how the leases are written. Painting can be a capital expense, but you could build a reserve for that as well. Or you can charge it back to the tenants.
Well,
Okay, so what do you want?
I like mention a couple of places
Outline and talk
that
about.
ask you to provide the parking income.
Like, how does that work?
wait, what happened?
Well, these are parking lots in which they charge you, they charge you based on the time that you park there.
Oh, okay, like a parking garage
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, like Wajimaya down in Chinatown,
I mentioned some.
they
Okay.
used to do that.
Impact.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Do we wanna
people
do
are
that?
doing the right thing. Look at the book,
Charging
see
for
what-
parking
Uh-huh.
in this type of mall, no. I mean,
Probably
It's in
not.
a neighborhood shopping
it
center.
depends. I think because Wajimaya is in a location where it's
Right.
high density, and people abuse that parking lot
Yeah,
to
it's
visit other
downtown.
places for hours.
Yeah.
So, because ours is probably in like a Northgate.
So
No.
I don't think we
probably
should.
not.
Yeah,
Is that
I think it
Yeah.
depends on.
The
I think
location.
right.
If we were downtown, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We were just
Oh,
talking about that.
now
on economic
that
class,
would get
Yeah.
plenty of parking income.
Yeah, yeah.
expenses. And in some cases, the tenants have.
Oh, yeah, marketing fund.
Oh,
Yeah, you mentioned that, Samantha, yeah.
for operating expense?
Right, for adding income, because they give us, but that's also an expense that we'll put out,
Yeah.
but they reimburse us for it,
Oh,
to include them in our brochures.
right.
And then like there's a list of all of our expenses on like starting on page 449. So it's like audit fees, commission, elevators. I don't know if we would have elevators. Like heating, ventilation, air conditioning, maintenance, insurance, janitorial costs, landscaping, legal fees, maintenance, payroll, the whole
Oh my God.
painting. That's all expenses
gotta
that
make
we
money.
would be in charge for. So it starts on $4.99.
$4.99?
$4.99 for all of our expenses,
Okay.
and then $4.36 for all of our income.
Amber, what are the other two
I really
types
have
of
to use
income
For what
for
was it?
the for this
$4.99
budget?
$4.99?
and $4.36. So
You got
$4.36
base
is our
and
income,
reception,
right.
and then
and
$4.99 is all of our
Oh.
expenses. And it
I
goes.
don't know. What about, you got maintenance on there?
$4.99
Yeah, $4.99 goes
is
all
the
the
maintenance
way.
agreement.
I see $4.49.
Wait, am I reading it wrong?
Okay,
Oh, my bad. It's $4.49.
ladies
I
and
pulled a Terry.
gentlemen, how are we doing?
We got it, we're collecting lots of income.
Now, what do you, let me ask you this. How do you know how much income you're gonna have?
Because we're in a really good location.
No, but,
And we charge a base rent.
but what do you do? I mean, how do you physically do that?
They prepay us the month ahead.
No. Let's go back to even more basic than that. How do you know what they're paying you?
And it's in the lease agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna look at every single lease,
Yep.
okay? How about if that's been done before?
It needs
Now,
to be.
let's say this is, it's August, okay, it's
Okay.
August. You have records of what they paid you for the first 7 months of the year, do you not?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay? And you also, your leasing people and you as a property manager should have a leasing report that shows which tenants are going to have their lease expire in sometime in the next 4 months before the end of the year.
Uh-huh.
Okay, or how many are gonna expire next year, which is the budget you're planning for. So you need to find that report, and study it, and insert the information that's necessary into your budget. Okay, and let's concentrate only on income. Did I tell you that before?
No.
Income and expenses, but we'll do
Well,
income. Okay.
do income first, we'll talk about expenses later.
Okay.
I did tell you, yeah. 10 minutes to talk about income stuff,
So we're just doing income right now?
just income, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
We'll worry about
Okay,
expenses
so
later.
with the leasing report, is it unusual to have somebody ready to be moved in as soon as that other person comes? Can you
If
plan ahead for
you
that?
know that somebody's expiring and you're not going to renew that lease, let's say they've been a problem tenant and you don't want to renew their lease,
Oh.
you have that right not to negotiate a new lease with them, even though they may want to stay.
Okay.
But if you don't have anybody to replace them, you might want to let them stay in a month to month
Right, okay,
or something like that until you can get rid of them and get a new replacement with a new tenant.
okay.
Sometime, okay, one other thing that you need to think about. What happens if somebody just closes up their shop
Oh, it's called blackout?
at the end of September?
Yeah.
It's called that blackout.
And-
If they keep paying their rent, it would be fine, right? Unless you
Well,
don't like it, unless you don't
yeah,
want them to do that, then you can kick them
They,
out.
they would still be obligated to pay their rent,
Yeah.
but only for about 6 months. After 6 months,
You can kick them out.
the judge would say, well, you had 6 months to lease it up to somebody else. You put them in default, get an official eviction, close them out, because they're gone and they're not paying rent. You need to do something about it. You can't just let them sit there and try to sue them. You could sue them, but if they're not paying rent, they're probably not gonna have any money to pay you a lawsuit either. But, you need to think about that too, and maybe budget for some unexpected store closure, okay?
Okay.
Now, the anchor stores, you know, will be there.
Yeah.
You know what their rent is, you know what when their rent goes up or whatever, you can count on that, you need to make sure you add that in. But these smaller tenants, you need to study that leasing report and determine when you're gonna have vacancies. Talk to your leasing people and see, okay, when do you think you can get this space leased up? And plan for at least one small tenant to maybe drop out unexpectedly, so that you give yourself a cushion, so you don't expect as much money as you might get, and you're not going to spend more than you have for your operating expenses. That kind of, because you still have to show a profit, otherwise.
What about time of year, like in December, of course, you're gonna make a lot of money, but January,
Well, but that's sales. That's not rent. You're not counting what they make in sales, except that you will also calculate those people that have percentage rent. But your accountant or your assistant or whoever handles that process should have a report on who pays what percentage rent, historically what they've paid, and you incorporate that into your income part of your budget. Now, the budgets have to be done in the chapter. If you read it, you saw a schedule of budgeting.
Yes.
Now, in commercial properties, because the tenants pay the triple net expenses and they pay, you have to charge them during the month of the year that you're budgeting for. An estimate of what their operating expense share is going to be. You have to have that budget done and approved and information out to those tenants by December, before that year starts, so that they know what they're going to pay in their first rent check that's due on January 1st. And the anchor tenants and some of the big boys may have approval authority of your budget in their lease. So if you're going to charge $17,000 for cleaning the parking lot in a year, or replacing lights, and Target thinks that's too much, they won't approve your budget.
they can say no?
Yeah.
Which then you have to
Or
if they're not going to pay,
Safeway.
you have to force the cost to be.
Well, no, they have to pay.
Oh.
But what you might have to do is reduce the amount of expenses that you're planning for. You may have to say, okay, you know, some of this is contingency, so we'll reduce it to $12,000 and hope we can make it through. Okay, we'll approve that.
Oh, wow, I didn't know they could just be like, no.
Well, because they pay a bigger share than the smaller tenants, and they might not want to pay that. They may not think it's necessary.
Okay.
Now, let's say you want to seal coat the entire parking lot, which is it makes it look nice and new, and then you have to do the striping again. But they say, we will only pay for seal coating once every 3 years.
Okay, there are 5 years coming up.
Okay, you can either eat the cost yourself if you want to do it or feel you have to, or you go down and tell the store manager and his boss, come on out, let's look at the parking lot, I'll show you why we need it.
Okay.
And you convince them, or you negotiate with them, or whatever. But that's having the budget ready, approved by your boss and your people, and then send it out to the tenants. Or if some of them have approval authority, they have to have it. And then you have to have that all completed so that in December, your assistant, your accountant, your people who prepare the invoices for rent, send out the information to the people, to the tenants who have to pay that. So there's a reason why you have to have a budget schedule and a deadline and all that sort of stuff. It's more than just you using the budget as an operating plan and a tool. It's information that's required in the operation of commercial property for the tenants, because they pay the expenses and they pay their rent and all that.
So can any of the smaller tenants disagree and say, I don't really want the
They can
parking lot?
disagree, but they have no recourse, because their leases are written that they pay their pro rata share of all the legal operating expenses. Now, they may disagree that, you know, I don't use as much water as, like, let's say a clothing store. They have 3,000 square feet, or let's say 1,000 square feet, okay, small boutique store. Right next to them is a 1,000-foot salon that has hair washing and soak your feet or whatever. So they pay the same amount for water because they're the same size. If you charge by the square foot
There's insurance, taxes.
for water. If
But can you speed it?
the dry goods or the clothing store may complain that they're paying more than they should for water because all they have is a bathroom and a sink.
Right.
Okay, you have to either say,
Well,
look, the lease says you pay your pro rata share by square footage. If you want, you can pay for a deduct meter, put a meter, sub-meter on your water supply and charge you for that. But since we're doing you a favor, since it's not required in the lease, if you want to pay for a meter, which can sometimes be $1,500 or something like that, if they're willing to do that, it's worth it to them, then you can charge them based on the water they actually use.
So that's $1,500 for that little meter. Is that something that they have to pay for like every month, or is that like a one-time fee?
Well, that would be a one-time, because it's
So I might save them money.
something like that, the water department would come
My
out,
month is gonna go down because we know that.
PUD or whatever it happens to be, public utilities would come out, install the meter, it's the cost of the meter plus the labor and all the,
Okay, so you have
whatever
schedule
else.
increases,
Environmental fees,
Yeah.
because
and it may be less than that. Or in a big store, maybe more than that, but that's another thing you can do. But that, I don't wanna clutter up the income side of that with what I just said, but it's important that your budget is done in a certain time frame, because it affects the operation of the entire property and all the tenants, okay?
Okay.
Now,
25 is a lot.
it is. And now, I don't expect you to go down and detail all this stuff. I want you to talk about what's involved and what, okay, what else do we consider? What,
Okay, the
I mean,
percentage
you're
of
not
the
gonna
rent
produce,
camp.
you're not gonna produce something that's gonna mean anything with 25 tenants.
I like to see visual. I'm a very visual person. I
Well,
like
you're
to
gonna
have
be here till tomorrow, because we're gonna start talking about
But it's a
this.
good exercise. I get why you're doing that, Terry.
because you want to get, it's like, okay, so for supervision, right? That
Now,
you could
but
charge them
you-
extra for
but-
10%.
Wait. You're talking about expenses here.
No, you're talking about charges that you're coming in.
Income.
Percentage rent,
Rent.
percentage rent,
Okay.
CAMs,
CAM is,
common area maintenance.
yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
And so do you.
What Paul means
Or-
is that
But
it can be considered expenses.
Yeah,
No, we're just
well-
doing income.
well,
I'm
yeah,
doing
but
a
you-
visualization
okay,
of an income
but-
chart.
I'm getting confused now.
But now, you won't have to research each individual one, because you'll have those records,
Yeah,
rent records and
right.
CAM records for the
Right.
first 6 months of the year.
Right.
Okay? So you'll know what's coming in,
Yeah.
okay? All right.
I know.
Just want, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
But
trying to.
don't write it out for each individual tenant.
I'm just sort of
Talk
guessing.
conceptually.
Yeah, that's my conception right there.
All right. Very good.
It has to balance to be 100%.
Okay. All right.
They charge
So
those people a lot of money to do that, though.
I'll give you one more minute on that, and then we'll,
Okay, so what
we'll
did
talk
you
about
say?
the income stuff.
Because what I did is to get the income, right? They have this really great chart on. Because I realized he's always ahead.
Wait,
We
what
have these
page?
activities, 681.
Temporary tenants.
Oh.
So
You're
this
right,
is
it is
financial
including-
analysis. So, because we just covered that in
Yeah,
6
yeah,
and how they talk about this, right? Is they talk about these are what you get, right? Because so you can look at because I like to kind of get an idea. So you have a supermarket, they get like $50,000 a month rent, right? So this kind of does the visual thing for me, and then you go out to 25 because these are all stuff that you get. You get a percent, and this is income. Less for anchor stores, right? Because they have less problems, but and I think that's
Supermarket is the one that has the highest rent of all of them.
Yeah.
so. This is where they talk a little bit more about it. That's why
And the largest
sell
square
jewelry.
footage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a natural break point.
So it's dependent, not just upon the,
Artwork out of the
yeah,
dinosaur.
but also the
If
footage.
you wanna sell in my mall.
Do we need to have like any kind of
And
emergency
that covers the
in our budget, emergency planning?
The tenants pay rent for this.
exclusive.
Yeah, but that would be an
Yeah, why-
expense,
no,
right?
everybody gets-
Yes,
Yeah.
it will.
Why
And so
should
are
I
we not
give you the
talking-
opportunity to sell your
We're
merchandise?
just talking about the income budget, not the operating budget.
Okay,
Taking the money out of
well, we
Oh.
got it.
client's pocket.
Okay, what do we got so far?
Okay, we've got the base rent, which all our tenants would pay.
Right?
We have the percentage rent for all of them, except for the bank.
Plus you got my.
Wait, say that again for me, Eric. Percentage rent?
All right,
Percentage
ladies and
rent,
gentlemen.
everybody.
Time's up.
We got 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
3 tenants we know about, the other 22 we didn't, I said 40% vacancy rate.
Terry and
Terry,
Amber
we
and
just
Jan
got
and
called.
Samantha and Mary. Let's listen up. I'm gonna have this group talk about their income budget first, and then you can add or subtract. Okay, who's your spokesperson?
281 or 681.
Okay, we will. Give it to her.
And then
Okay,
694,
yeah.
695.
What do we, how do we put together an income budget for your property?
We have 2 anchor stores that are paying $25 a square foot.
Okay.
And we gave them concessions on percentage rent because they have the clout to.
Okay, let's just talk to everybody
Yes.
conceptually about what you did
Right.
and why.
And the Pad Restaurant has given us a 3-month notice that they're leaving.
Okay, so that's a consideration.
And so
You know you
that's
gotta
gonna
fill
be
them
a
up.
0 income pretty soon.
Yep. Okay,
So that's not good. We're looking for new tenants.
okay.
And let's see here. The 2 anchor stores are only paying, well, that's expenses.
Okay. But that's income against your expense line,
Right.
so you need to add that in. Whatever they're paying you,
All the
Triple net.
stores are paying us triple net plus they're paying CAM for the interior and exterior.
okay?
And the anchor stores are only paying exterior because
Okay.
they service from the parking lot, not the interior.
Okay.
They get away with that. And,
We have to agree on the vacancy.
oh,
We agreed on 4%.
Okay, so 4% are gonna be vacant for the entire year,
Yes.
okay? Reasonable. You hope that your leasing people can fill up those vacancies so that you get that income, that adds to your net operating income and increases your profit.
And bonuses.
There you go, okay, whatever.
the 4% or less.
And then
Now, where do you get this information?
Releases?
Say again?
We have 6 months of leases.
Leases, okay,
We'll-
but you also have a leasing report of some type that has,
we
and a
take-
rent roll,
I'll take over a little bit on this.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're a full-service management company.
yes?
Our tenants do nothing, okay? Triple net,
I
we
wanna,
take
I wanna
care of
lease in your space.
we take care of the cam, middle, miscellaneous. We're gonna charge utility fee, bill backs, okay?
But
Manager
now,
fees, we have
is
to do
that-
anything for them.
is that income for
Yeah.
you now?
Yeah. We have to, you know, because we always get a little bit more than what we collect. I mean, we get more than what we need to collect.
Okay, all right.
Because in the book, it says we're allowed to charge, you know, get wholesale prices on things and then charge them at market rates to the tenants, right?
All right.
All right. So we have a manager fee, we have the insurance fee, we have the tax fee, the association fee,
Right.
the promotion fee of the mall to help the owner out,
Right.
emergency fees, legal
Who
fees,
said
people
emergency?
falling down
That
on
would
the
be good, too.
sidewalks out there, stuff like that, and asking questions about outdoor activities. Anytime a legal question would come up for a tenant or for the owner, we're gonna have a fee for that, reserved, you don't have an attorney. All right,
Okay,
then we have cost.
now how do you determine all that to come up with your income budget?
Well, we can see probably a percentage of the fees for the rent for the emergency fee. I don't know how much promotion, how many times a year we're gonna do a promotion, how much it's gonna cost.
Okay,
Good thing.
but what do you have to help you determine that? You have marketing
The
director
history,
in your
hopefully,
shopping
of
center?
the last time we
You
did.
have last year's budget, you have a lease expiration report, you have a rent roll.
Oh, you
Tell
have a
me how much
utility
it-
report, yes.
Yeah.
Utility usage report.
Okay, you have history you need to study to use this too.
And the
We have a
contract.
maintenance manager.
And you have actual figures accounted for the first 6 months of the year, at least.
Yeah, so we might have one promotion already during the year.
Okay, so you go some on history and some on forecast.
We forecast the taxes always probably go up and insurance fees.
Well, you pretty much know what's gonna happen with your taxes because you have historical records provided to you twice a year, okay? What else?
Common area maintenance, with janitorial fee, based on history with contract with them, security fee with contract,
Okay.
a maintenance fee with the contract. Also, I wanted to put down there, but I didn't put down there that those, maintenance people come in for special things, like for the roof or air conditioning and stuff like that. If that goes on a bill back or that was going to emergency. Like,
Normally it would be a bill back for any kind of repairs.
okay, it would be
Or you'd have a R&M category in your
Maintenance.
expenses, repair and maintenance.
okay,
A
that's
certain
expensive.
lump sum that you, based on previous expenses and projection.
Well, in the leases, we're gonna say that they're responsible, the tenants are responsible for the parking lot. You know, so they're gonna give us a fee for the groundskeeping, parking lot, maintenance, security, and janitorial, based on contracts.
All right.
So we'll know ahead of time.
Okay.
And then there's miscellaneous, percentage rent,
Who's gonna be the most important person to help you put this budget together?
accountant.
Accountant, okay?
And what you previously,
Accounts receivable.
you previously had every year.
Okay, and your leasing person, okay? If you have leasing staff, you need to know if they can fill up those projected vacancies, or if they have somebody
Anything else in there?
that you wanna renew, but probably won't renew. Okay? Accountants and operations people and leasing people are very important in putting this thing together. And you'll have records of previous years, and you'll probably have a leasing report that runs every month, printed off every month with important items for each tenant, when their expiration date is coming, how much rent you wanna charge them if you renew them, that kind of thing, okay?
This is properties insurance agent. Where does that come into play?
Well, that's, if your insurance rates are going up, you wanna know about it, but that's under expenses. Because generally speaking, you're not gonna be able to ask anybody about their rent, because you know what that's gonna be. It's in the lease. Expenses like taxes and all that sort of stuff, you need to find out, if there, any electricity rates are gonna increase. Or, you know, if your operating costs are gonna increase because the price of gas goes up, that kind of stuff. But that's expense part. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for this group?
No, you guys did an
Did a
excellent
good
job.
job.
Okay. Now, you guys talk about what you did. If anything different from what they did, to put your income budget together.
I think we did a really good job. They did a fantastic job. We pulled up our leasing reports with the list of expiration dates and who we're going to negotiate new leases with, and maybe one that we're not. And Amber already got people in reserves to fill in those leases. And that we put them on a month-to-month lease, just in case, you know, that's somebody that we want to get rid of. So we've already studied that. Safeway and Target, they pay, you know, between 0.015 and 0.75%.
What?
Percentage rent. And we made sure that we got the income from their the common area maintenance
Now, how do you,
based on square footage percentage rent.
how do you know that what they pay?
Because
We looked at the history of what they've paid in their previous
Right.
leases.
Okay, you have it counted,
And
Right.
it's covered in
what
the
income
lease
you
agreement.
receive every month up until this time.
Yeah.
Okay, plus you have a rent roll, which is usually once a month, you have a rent roll that lists all the current stuff on each tenant. Okay, what else?
And the marketing fund, we did a really good job, don't you think?
We did.
Well,
Don't tell each other, tell everybody else.
We did
Tell me.
excellent, don't you think?
Now, I'm gonna ask you, I told both groups, but why is it important that you do all this stuff?
So that you don't lose money
right.
for the next foreseeable year.
Okay,
No surprises.
No shot.
No surprises.
No surprises for your owner.
And we did.
Okay,
We
and-
sort of did our budget about a 95% occupancy rate because we're so good.
okay, so, but you projected 5% vacancy and they only projected 4.
Yeah, we're more realistic.
Okay. They have better
Laugh.
No, I know, hey.
They have tenants who wanna stay.
But we have too many 2,000 square foot units, so that's our
Okay,
issue.
well, that's a consideration, all right? Anything else that
Oh, go ahead, you guys.
is important in budgeting income? Why is it so important? Obviously, you know you wanna get enough income to cover your expenses and have some profit left over, right?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Okay,
So you know you're on the right track. So you're not-
okay.
Oh, and we've got late fees too.
And you don't wanna be operating blindly, you don't wanna, I don't know how much money I have to spend or how much is coming in.
Right.
You need to know that, so you can make the right decisions, okay? And you have to do it and have it done in a timely manner, why?
So the tenants and everybody knows what to expect to.
No, so you can get a feedback from the owner.
So they will
Well,
pay
that too.
promptly
Okay, you need-
January
You need to have
1st.
your owner approve
Yeah.
the budget, or whoever's, the owner gives the responsibility to approve the budget if you have somebody above you as a property manager. If you deal directly with the owner, then you gotta get the owner's approval of your budget. And what else? You have to let the anchor tenants
Right.
know, or the tenants that have approval authority, they have to approve it as
Right.
well. If you don't have anybody like that, great. Then you get the owner's approval, then the budget's ready. Then what do you have to do? You have to let the tenants know what their, okay, we're talking about the next part of the budget, the expenses, but you gotta have that budget done so that you can let the tenants know what they're gonna have to pay the next year, month by month.
Right.
Okay, to pay the expenses. That's a requirement, so that's why the budgets are so darn important.
Is that also so they can see whether or not they want to stay there or not? If it's too high?
Well, no, that's normally not a consideration. If they're getting close to their expiration, or if their sales aren't good enough, you're gonna know that. They're not gonna pay their rent on time, they're gonna struggle, they're
Right.
gonna ask for some kind of concession, because they can't pay their rent. You say, well, if you hang on for the next 5 months, then your lease is up, you can say goodbye, and you can stop bleeding money, you know. But you normally wouldn't have a tenant say, geez, my operating expenses are too high, I'm gonna leave in next July. Because if their lease doesn't expire in July, they can't leave. They still have to pay rent. They signed a contract.
How long are the leases do you usually do? Or is it
3
when
to 5 years.
3, yeah,
We
okay.
prefer 5-year leases,
Uh-huh,
because 3 years is a short time when
Right.
it comes to finding another replacement.
Right.
Spending all the money to get that tenant in there, they spend money to set up their business.
yeah, build
By the
up.
time they start making a profit, you know, it's a year later, and then they got 2 years to make it, and then they're gone, and then you have to start all over again, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Okay, let's flip over now, excuse me, and talk about expense budgets. And I'll give you a laundry list of things that we need to plan for. It won't take very long to talk about this aspect of it, because it's pretty much common sense, but,
Because we want to make sure we have time to go over the tests, right?
yes, I will make sure of that. So, you know, you need to think about what do you have to budget for landscape maintenance, irrigation, cleaning the parking lot,
Where's that? There's that.
pest control, winter services, fire sprinkler monitoring, security, janitorial, HVAC maintenance, lighting, certain testing that's required,
Oh, testing.
like backflow testing in your water system, it's required by the cities,
Wow.
utilities, electricity for your parking lot lights and your common area lights.
You mentioned fire alarm, that's it?
Yep. Well, that's another requirement, okay? Roof maintenance, utilities I mentioned, water, sewer, electrical, gas, garbage,
Electrical, gas.
blah, 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 insurance, real estate taxes. Okay, let's take 5 minutes and just talk about that stuff. Don't write anything down unless you need to take some notes.
I'm a writer. Okay.
Page 711.
Yeah, 7-Eleven, I
Once
guess.
again,
Yeah.
Yeah,
With operating budget, you've got records,
right,
okay, historical data that you have to consider.
records,
That way you don't just come up with a wild guess of
Right.
how much your electrical bill is going to be.
and we also can contact the PUD or
you go.
whoever is providing
Right.
services to see if they expect
A rate increase.
rate increase.
Rate
Now,
increase.
timing is
Mid-year
critical.
on the rate.
Timing is critical.
Okay.
You want to call them early enough
Right.
if they're going to have a rate increase for next year. Well, we don't know. We're having a council meeting in November
Right.
and we're not sure. So what do?
You
You
keep,
estimate.
Yeah, you estimate, you contact other utility
Yeah,
districts
or figure,
nearby to see what.
add 3% or add 4% to what you did last year. So you cover yourself.
Okay,
Because sometimes they don't operate on your schedule. You know. They operate on their own schedule and they may not come up with a rate increase until April.
oh,
So then, you have to have prepared for that somehow. If you prepare for it and you estimate your charges to your tenants, the income will come in. You just won't spend as much for the year. Then you'll have a refund to give back to your tenants at the end of the year. Or and your budget will be fine. You'll have a little cushion. You want to operate on the positive side of your budget. You don't want to have to explain a big deficit like our government should be explaining, but they're not. In this case, you'll be held to account for that budget, unlike
wars
the
are
politicians.
expensive though,
Who?
wars are expensive. And that's really what it is, that's where the biggest deficit goes, is always towards the war machine.
the war effort.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, whatever.
It really does.
Say word.
War.
War.
Wars are the most
Oh,
expensive
war.
thing governments pay.
But you don't have wars in shopping centers.
Yeah.
So think
God, I
about
hope not yet.
all the things
Okay.
that are involved in that,
Okay.
and what processes you go through to set up a budget for operations.
So you'd like us to have maybe site expenses, building expenses, looking at each,
Yeah.
making sure that they're,
What do you
Okay.
consider? You
Okay.
need to fix stuff.
all
You need to
right.
clean stuff. You need to maintain
Yeah,
the roof.
sidewalks.
You need to clean out the gutters. You need to
Okay.
paint maybe.
Right.
Or
Oh, so you just want to
Pressure
plus,
wash.
plus you need
Yeah.
to pay for the
Utilities.
security operation, the utilities, lights, electricity. Pardon me?
Oh, yeah, window washing.
All the maintenance things,
Okay.
Yeah.
seasonal.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff like that. Now that
Vacancy.
you'll come up with things that you hadn't thought about. So you have a miscellaneous too. And repair and maintenance. Some of those things you have to guess at. Well, our parking lot hasn't had a major repair to it in 7 years, so we may have more potholes. And let's plan on put $1,500 for pothole repair, or let's do touch-up painting rather than major painting, or let's.
I told the idiot was a kind of warned that president was.
That's true, touch up.
You consider the age of your equipment.
Oh,
We may have to repair or replace an HVAC unit. Budget for that.
Were there? Yeah,
It's-
no.
you have to be pretty creative about some of this stuff. Some people are good at that. Some people just can't think beyond today. Oh my God, you know, something happened. Now we got to
Be
figure out how to pay for it.
proactive instead of reactive.
You gotta be creative. You gotta be thinking ahead. You gotta use those historical records that you have, last year's budget, and your accounting of how that went, and the notes that you made. Because trust me, when you have 18 budgets to worry about, and you gotta get them done in 2 months, you better have something to remind you. You
It
better
seems
have
like
notes.
throughout the year, like with accounting will tell you what they pay. Accounts payable has a chart.
Yes, you'll get a monthly report. You'll have to explain the variances in beyond five. If your income is not high enough, why not? What happened? Well, this tenant left, and we'd only budgeted for one tenant to go out, but we got 3 that left, and they're not paying us rent anymore.
Right, or
Right.
cams.
So you know about that. And then, or we had a truck that went out of control, came off the freeway and knocked out 17 light poles. How are we going to budget for that?
Yeah.
That's an
Right.
emergency expense. You explain that, okay? Then when you're reading your budget the next year, or doing your budget for this next year, you take a look at the last 2 years' budgets. Okay, what happened? You know, what did we do? What did we spend here?
Right.
Let's add another contingency, or let's. We don't have to spend as much on this because we signed a new contract with landscaping, and
Okay.
they're cheaper than the old one, so we're going
Okay.
to save money there. But let's be smart. Let's not reduce it down to exactly what we're paying. Let's leave a little bit of cushion in there.
Right.
This is a planning tool. And you're smart to plan a little bit more expense and a little bit less income. Because then if you get the income that you didn't expect, that's gravy. You spend a little bit less than you had planned to spend, that's also gravy.
So in the budget, basically for expenses, as it goes throughout the year, like a janitorial service, they schedule like certain cleanings every 1 week or every 3 months or every
Right,
6
right,
months or once a year.
Like waxing the floor.
So it's sort of like that within the expense account of what needs to be done. Every time it's being done, you basically review it so that at the end of the year when it comes up again in the big budget, you've kind of already estimated or looked at it.
Right.
And then if you need to do something between that time and the end of the budget, you're already like what you're saying, proactively.
You've already thought about it. You've
Right.
already accounted for it. Yeah.
Now, have you done like a certain percentage? Like saying, okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
Does that work?
Some companies will tell you,
This
rather
huge-
than wasting time estimating
Yeah.
charges or calling a utility company, we know how
Yeah.
much of a pain that is. Just add 3% to your operating
Oh, really?
expenses.
Okay, so.
But you still have to be knowledgeable enough of your own operation
Right.
to know that, you know, the storm drain is, we've been patching it for 3 years already. We got to replace that
Yeah.
thing. So plan for it.
Okay.
You know, you got to know your property and know what you need to do, but follow the company guidelines. Most companies that you work for that have many properties, like a real estate investment
Yeah.
trust or an owner of a big number of shopping centers or whatever, they'll give you the guidelines they want you to operate.
So now this is just on another thing because we had this in another class. But what about soils testing? Looking at soils,
Well,
like sinkholes that might occur in the parking lot or
that's-
something like that.
that's something-
Because that would be huge.
That would be a huge
Yeah.
expense. You might plan a contingency if you think there's a problem, or if you have
Okay.
small sinkholes.
Okay.
You might talk to the boss and say, you know, we've got 3 little sinkholes here, and I think we have a problem.
Right.
Can we budget for
Okay.
more? Now, some of that might fall into the capital expense kind of thing.
Oh,
if
'cause
you
it is-
may need to
okay.
redo your entire parking lot.
Right. Okay.
And for that, you could set up a reserve in some cases where you charge 3 cents a square foot for 2 years or 3 years. Put it aside for a reserve to repair the entire parking lot or replace it. or whatever. All different kinds of ways, but
They stole all the wire.
okay.
It's like 480 volts.
Right.
Well, this seems pretty straightforward.
They've taken the underground.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, for this one, we'll just talk about it as a group. We won't split up because we're running fairly short of time. What's the most important thing about nailing down an operating budget. What are some very important things you have to ensure that you,
You want to plan for more expenses than there are and less income.
okay, yeah, it's good. Try to
Cushion.
think about the worst case scenario in operations budget so that you've got enough money planned for your expenses. Because you can never really predict with 100% certainty what your expenses are going to be. It's much less certain in expenses than it is in income, generally. You always want to try to budget a little bit less in income so that if you get more, if you have more temporary tenants, you have more tenants with percentage rent, and your leasing people are going to put in more tenants than you project to be vacant, that's good. You want that. You don't want to have less money in your operating budget than it costs you to operate. You want to plan a little bit more in operating, a little bit less in income, okay? What else is important about operating costs, expenses? What do you use for the starting line?
Past historical costs.
Okay, historical data.
But it's also a fine line, because you wanna have enough, but all of your tenants are gonna be charged the triple net, and if it goes up, they're gonna be screaming. And if it goes down and you don't have enough in reserve, I mean, they're gonna be happy that it's gone down, but if you don't have enough in reserve, then next year you're gonna have to recoup that, and then they're really upset.
Okay, good. One thing we haven't talked about, but every year there's a reconciliation of the CAM charges.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the year, if you didn't spend all that you collected from the tenant for that common area maintenance,
Right.
you have to pay them back, so give them a refund, okay? If it's more, if your expenses are higher than what you estimated, then you have to bill them more at the end of the year, and they really don't like that.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to be fairly certain and stay within a certain range. If it goes up 1.5%, they're not going to complain. If there's a 7% difference between what you budgeted and what you charged them, and now you're asking for another 7% because you didn't have enough in your budget, they're not going to like that. Okay? Not much they can do about it most of the time, but you want happy tenants. And you don't want them to be paying more than they need to all during the year, because they've got to make a profit to be successful. Okay? Budgeting is very crucial, an important part of your job. If you don't know how to do budget and you're not careful with how you budget, you can be in trouble. And you don't want that. This budget that you have here, could I? It covers everything. Yeah, it covers everything.
But not all property managers give you that, because we've got a couple of different property managers, and that one.
But you can require it from property
True.
managers. You should be able to do that as an owner.
That's true. But they
Okay.
don't always volunteer.
This one has the income budget for the clock tower building. Northwest Pharmaceutical, how much they pay each month, that's great. Vacancies, obviously pay 0. Dream Dinners, they make up dinners and you go buy them, or they make them up and you take them home and you put them in your refrigerator and then pull one out, and heat it up, and that's your dinner for the night. How much money they pay each month. Okay, then you get to the operation part. You got janitorial service contract, janitorial supplies, window cleaning, carpet cleaning, trash removal. Very important stuff. You need to know how much you're going to pay for that each month throughout the year, so that you can know how much you're going to charge those tenants each month. And you hope that you come out very close at the end, so it's $1 here or $1 there difference. Then the tenants are happy and the owner's happy and you're happy. But like I said before, if you go over on your expenses and you've got to bill them back for more money, they're not going to be happy. Just like you wouldn't be happy if the power company didn't bill you one month and then at Christmas time they send you a bill saying you owe $500 for electricity. Why didn't you tell me before? We didn't plan that. Okay, HVAC, elevator service, roof repair, plumbing repairs, electrical repairs, relamping, changing out light bulbs. Sometimes it's more efficient to replace the light bulbs all at the same time than it is to wait
Right.
for 3 or 4 of them to burn out.
That's true on commercial.
Okay, because if you find 3 burnout light bulbs, and they've all been in about the same amount of hours or weeks or months, whatever, if you replace those 3, you may be out replacing 3 more in a week. Because they've all been in service the same amount of time. So it may be more cost effective for you to have one company come out, replace all the light bulbs in one section at a time. Okay? Those are things that go into your budget planning. Door and window repairs, holiday decor, all the things that cost you money to operate the property. Keys and locks, general supplies, miscellaneous. That's always a good one. You need to know your property, know what you have to do, and budget for some expenses that you think about. Talk to your people, find out what they think is going to happen. Or, you know, the maintenance guys are out there every day looking at stuff. The security people find out, well, you know, this door in the back, we try to lock it and it wedges all the time. The hinges are falling apart. Okay, maintenance, can you fix it or do we need to replace it? Well, we need to replace it. We don't have it in the budget. We better put it in for next year. That's the kind of process you go through. Landscaping, interior and exterior, exterminator, parking lot sweeping, snow removal, parking lot lighting, sidewalk repairs, striping of the parking lot, seal coat, all those different things that happen. Utilities, we talked about that, electricity, gas, irrigation, water, sewer, backflow testing. All the municipalities now require backflow testing. It's a valve device that you have to put in your water supply line so that if something happens, the water that's in your toilet or in your whatever you use, sinks and stuff like that inside your space, doesn't back up into the water supply system for some reason. So that's an expense you have to plan for. And then management fees and office expenses and legal fees and consultants and security and all that kind of stuff. Taxes and insurance. All those things have to be accounted for by the property manager and his staff and an accountant and the people who actually operate with those things in order to put together an effective budget. There's one thing that you can do to be a star in property management is to know how to budget and to use that budget and to be competent enough to keep that budget in line. Because every month you'll be getting reports on where you are. The accountants have monthly reports of income, monthly reports of expenses. And your owner or your company that you work for and your tenants are going to be asking you if there's a variance in some of those categories, why is that? You need to know. Well, we had a semi run off the road and knock down 17 light poles. We had this major expense. We had to get it done. That's why there's a big variance in that lighting repair section of the budget that we didn't budget for. Okay? You have to answer those questions every month. It's called a variance report. And if you're on top of it, and your people are giving you information and you're reading those reports, you're doing your job right, it'll be easy. And you'll be a superstar. But if you don't know your budget, you don't think it's important, and things go wrong and you start getting less income and you're not covering your expenses or you have expenses that you haven't budgeted for, somebody's going to be knocking on your door. Okay? Yeah, you had a question or something?
Well, we were talking about how the anchor tenants kind of have a first say in whether they approve your budget or not.
Okay.
Do you ever encounter where maybe in order to keep the expenses lower, sometimes if you know somebody who knows somebody, like a referral, that you might get a better deal, maybe with anchor tenants.
Well,
Do you think you could lower your expenses by maybe pooling together the people that they know to maybe
you could, when
get
you're,
deals?
when you're budgeting, you always get, that's a time to renew contracts for the next year. So you go out for bid to contractors to do landscaping, sweeping, provide services, that repair and maintenance, that kind of stuff, if you don't have your in-house maintenance people. And you try to find the best price. And if somebody, like if Target knows a contractor that they use to do their roofing and they're great and they cost less than the roofing contractor you use, sure, do a contract with them.
You know, I just thought of something. You know, I've seen in a few strip malls where they have signs, landscaping services provided by, and they'll put the company's name down.
Yeah.
So it makes me think if somebody got a deal of a deal, like you got a discount rate on your landscaping for that little sign right there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
You
When you
might.
say,
Yeah. Okay, let's jump to the exam.
well, now I have a question since a lot of people aren't here.
What?
Wouldn't that be horrible that they show up next week and want to go over their test too?
Well, that's too bad. That's too bad. That's too bad.
Okay, it's their problem.
Yeah.
I'll hand these out to you. and then
Thank
we'll
God.
go over real quickly.
Sorry, because I just want to make sure.
There's one red on each one of these, but I wrote in the answers if I could.
Can you turn my face down?
And what I did was I added up the number of points that you got,
I won't like unless you want to share.
and then it's a percentage of the total points. I wrote
Hope
that
you all
up in the
did good. I
corner.
got 100%.
You got 100%? Awesome.
Nobody got 100%.
I'm just teasing.
Except me.
You just made a lot of enemies.
Except me.
Now I put my glasses away and I see a lot of red on my
I made it
test.
up. I should
Fake it till you make it, right?
I should have.
91, what'd you get?
What did you get on that?
And I
Yeah.
just
got,
made a
like-
couple of
Oh, you got
recommendations
some.
on some of them.
I passed. How about that?
Some of you need some math work, and some of you could use a tutor. Now, none of this is saying that you're failing. It's just I want to help you out. Okay.
So
There's
were
a lot-
they-
a lot of red on everybody? Not all of it's bad. And I think even on the questions where you tried and didn't get the right answer, you might have got a half a point. So
Oh, that one I knew was wrong.
okay, here we go. Number one.
I can't read your writing. Yeah, your writing is hard.
We're gonna have to
Can
listen.
you tell us how many points they're worth?
Okay, just listen to what I tell you.
Okay.
Number one, what technological advances allowed for the development of high-rise buildings? Structural engineering, fire-resistant steel, and elevators. Those are three, okay?
Well, I got building materials and design. How much was that worth? 2 or 3
3
points?
points total. What did I give you?
You only gave me 2.
I only got
Because you didn't have elevators, did you?
No, I didn't have elevators.
I
You
had
put that in
But I
there.
didn't have fire.
Okay, there you go. Okay, got it. Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
Steel construction. and,
I got 0, I'm happy. We still
Okay.
got a bunch to go.
Yeah. Number two, name 2 of the organization which will aid property managers to learn to perform their jobs more effectively. BOMA, ICSC, IRM, any others? NAOP? That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What document specifies the terms and conditions under which tenants in commercial properties operate their businesses?
The
What is it?
lease.
Police, okay. What are the major customers draws for large regional malls? Anchor stores. Okay. Even if you somebody put something else,
I
I
put
gave
fashion and specialty stock.
you some credit, didn't I?
About big names that could think of.
Yeah, I think I gave you some credit, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
What is CAM and how is it normally billed, Terry?
Common area maintenance and pro rata, but apparently you didn't like my pro rata, so it's existing monthly
Estimated
reconciliation.
monthly, reconciled annually
Right,
by pro rata share.
by pro rata share.
It's
Yep.
a 3-point question. How many did I give you?
2.5.
Okay, you're lucky. Okay, Why is a tenant roster important to property managers, and what information should it include? Okay, you need information so you can contact the tenants and have information about their space in order to deal with them. And it should include stuff like contact numbers, size of the space, name of the person, the store manager, and all that. You need it for emergencies, you need it for doing your daily business, all that kind of stuff. That was a 5-point question. Okay. Number 7, why do property managers maintain and manage commercial properties?
To enhance the properties under their care financially,
Okay,
visually.
To
Maximize the owner's return on investment.
there you go, to maintain the property for the owner, protect the owner's
don't
investment.
have to.
To control the tenants so that the operation is smooth. Okay, that was a 3-point question. Number 8, who controls the keys to tenant spaces in malls and retail shopping centers, and why? In retail, it's the tenant.
Yeah.
You don't want the property managers not want the liability.
Right. I didn't put liability, that's why you got it.
All right, that's a 3-point question. Number 9, parking stalls are valuable. Which properties are they most valuable and why? Okay? They're most valuable in a shopping center because you have more customers coming and going and they spend money that pays the rent. In office buildings and industrial parks and medical office buildings, they don't normally have that kind of customer traffic and they don't spend money necessarily when they're visiting those commercial properties. Okay, number 10, explain the concept of percentage rent. It's the tenant pays an additional percentage of rent above their normal rent if their sales go above a certain level. If you said anything like that, you got some credit, okay? Then the next part of that question was if the tenant pays 5% percentage rent and sells a certain amount with a break point of $350,000, how much percentage rent will he owe? Okay? In this case, in that problem, he didn't owe any percentage rent because he didn't have sales that reached the break point.
You didn't give me a score on it.
Yeah, you didn't give me anything either.
Yeah, because
What
you
did
got,
put?
I put 0.
But none.
but you got a score up next to
We
10.
had 10A and 10B.
So you got 4
10A,
points
Oh,
for it if
wait
you
a
got
minute,
it
let's see,
right.
what did you get for this?
You got 4 for the top
You
one?
got 3 points.
2.9.
Is it worth 4?
So you lost 1 point.
10 has A and B.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
10 goes above.
I know, I was hoping for more points too, and I was going to say something. I was going to go, 4 points.
I think you understand the concept. Okay.
I did.
Gotta go have coffee.
Let's do
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Number 11, why are shopping
yeah.
center tenants required to report monthly sales to the property manager? Because the property manager has to report sales, sales levels,
Right.
and he also needs to determine whether the tenant owes percentage rent. Okay?
Yeah, and how many points was that worth?
2.
11.
I got the 2.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you'd give me at least half a point for my consumer price index.
What did I give you?
You give me 1.5.
Well, you got everything but a half a point. Okay?
I'll stop whining, sorry.
Stop whining. Yeah. Number 12, what does triple net mean to the tenant? It means that the tenant pays
Real estate taxes?
pro rata share of taxes, insurance, and common area expenses. And it means extra rent that he pays above and beyond the base rent. Pardon me? It's a 3-point question. Okay. What did you say? What did you say, Michael?
Common areas, HA.
17, I got it.
HVAC?
Okay. I vegetated on that one.
Okay, all right. Number 13, what types of business would likely be restricted from leasing in a shopping mall?
Funeral home.
Oil changes.
Okay. Some,
that?
okay, good. What's the normal process for contracting for service required to maintain any commercial property? Obtain some bids.
From like contractors.
Obtain some bids from contractors, review them, make a selection, do a contract with them, and have them operate. And I think everybody did pretty well on those. What are 2 examples of potentially hazardous waste materials? Paint, dry cleaning products, motor oil, hydraulic fluid, battery acid, blood, human waste, whatever, okay? 16, demographic and psychographic data are used for leasing and determining tenant mix for what type of commercial properties? Normally shopping centers.
I put down strip mall and lifestyle mall, give me 2 points.
Okay, it was a 2-point question.
Yeah.
You happy? Okay. Number 17, the standard method for using to measure office space is BOMA standard.
Yep.
Okay?
It is BOMA standard.
It is BOMA standard.
It was in chapter 12
Okay, number 18.
that we didn't discuss before the
Concept of
test.
tenant mix is used commonly,
I got it wrong.
most commonly associated with
Oh, thank you.
shopping centers.
How much was that worth?
2.
Okay.
In a property which is 70% leased, what is the best way to increase net operating income? Lease to more tenants, okay?
Right.
Or hire, well,
That's
and hire a
crazy.
good leasing agent.
Well, what's the best way to increase this stuff? Fill up the space.
Right.
That's true, but you won't fill them up unless you have good leasing.
I went home and thought about
But you know,
that.
yeah, Lisa, speaking of which, they should like belong to Rotary clubs, things like that, all those little extra
All right.
things. Yeah. Really help.
Number 20 is, which 2 types of properties would you most likely find hazardous materials?
Medical and industrial parks.
Industrial parks and medical office, okay? Who is responsible for maintenance of common areas? The property manager or landlord? Not the tenant, okay? Not the contractors. They do the job, but it's the property manager or the landlord that's responsible. Where would the rules and regulations for operating a commercial property and controlling its tenants be found? In the lease. Lease. The lease is a governing document. It's a binding contract. Okay, what are 2 major differences between anchor tenants and shop tenants in malls and shopping centers? The size, the clout, the amount of rent, contributions to CAM, hours of operation sometimes, how they market. Normally the anchors draw more customers. Okay. The third, 24, match the following. A lessee is a tenant. A lessor is a landlord. A franchisee is a tenant. That was pretty self-explanatory. Okay. 25, in the lease, what gives one tenant the sole right to sell a particular item? Exclusive use clause, okay? Or exclusivity clause, whatever. 26, what specifies what merchandise or service a tenant may sell? What's the lease use clause? Or the use clause? 27, what does the landlord use to control the tenant mix? The use clause in the lease, okay?
How many points was that worth?
73, no,
No.
2.
2, okay.
Okay. 28, how does the property manager determine the status of maintenance or repair of commercial properties?
Evaluates, prioritizes, authorizes, inspects, regular
Regularly
inspections.
inspects the properties, that's all you needed to say, or inspect. Or if you look at records and ask your maintenance people, or,
I could follow up with the tenants. Call them and say, hey,
well, that's,
You know, keep-
but what, you need to determine the status of your property. You can't do that by calling the tenants necessarily, okay? 29, what systems in commercial properties are required to be periodically inspected by municipal department inspectors? Fire alarm, fire sprinkler, fire extinguishers, water backflow, elevators, stuff like that, okay?
What about sanitation and occupancy requirement?
Say that again?
Sanitation and
That
occupancy
would be,
requirements.
that would
they
be good
inspect
too,
it?
yep. Okay. 30, Name 2 possible tenants in medical office buildings. Dentist, chiropractor, physician, plastic surgeons, dental, pharmacy, gift shop, food, whatever, restaurant. What are 2 reasons to cause property managers to contract or provide security of managed properties? A lot of people talked about the difference between contract and in-house security. What I was looking for was the crime rate in the local area, a perceived threat, demographics. If you live in a low-rent neighborhood, a lot of times you have more crime and vandalism or whatever. Why would you hire security? To protect the value of the property, to prevent vandalism, to keep your customers and tenants safe. Pretty simple stuff, okay? 32, which document indicates that a tenant space is ready and legal for the tenant to open for business? Certificate of occupancy. The building permit allows you to build in there or do whatever, but a lease tells what you can do and what you can't do. But you need a certificate of occupancy from the city that you're in to show that you're legal to open for business. Number 33, tenant occupies 2,350 square feet of space and pays X amount in annual rent. Most people got that. $19.72 a square foot per year. Okay? Annual rent. Now, those of you who didn't get the math problems, we'll have another section later on for some math, or I would recommend if you really don't understand the math, call the tutor and have her teach you the math. Okay? Number 34, tenant has gross sales of $836 for the year. Base rent is $38,000. Percentage rent is 5%. How much percentage rent will she pay?
$3,800.
$3,800. The way you do that is you divide the rent by 5%. Comes out to $760,000. She sold $76,000 more than that. So 5% of that $76,000 gives you the $3,800. Okay? And if you don't have a calculator, please say something before the test is over. Because if you need that, you can use those to calculate. Okay? Number 35, a neighborhood shopping center is a gross leasable area of 213.7, and a grocery anchor, the tenant occupies 2,000 square feet. What percentage of the entire center does the tenant occupy? You add the two together, the 213 and the 28.5.
And you come up
and
with
you divide it into the
242
2,000, it comes up with what?
8%.
0.9%.
Sorry, I got 0.9 right there.
Okay? Not even 1% of the space, but that's important.
Oh, less than 1%.
because
Yeah, that's what it is.
based upon that almost 1%, that's how much the tenant pays in CAM expenses, okay? City of Bothell requires parking ratio of 5.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet. How many thousand square feet are in that shopping center? 179.384
times
5.7, 1,022 parking spaces, point something, okay? 37, your annual common area budget is $234,500. Tenant occupies 2%. You take the 2.4% of that budget figure and divide it by 12 for the monthly CAM estimate. So that's $480.73. That's what we've been talking about tonight with the budget. The expense part of that gets figured out like this, and the tenant is billed $480.73 a month, and that's what they pay in advance. If at the end of the year your budget expense is less than $234,000, then you probably owe that tenant some reimbursement, and that makes them happy. Okay. 38, options to renew the renew the lease generally favor the tenant. If the tenant has an option, they can exercise it, but the landlord cannot keep them from exercising their option. So that gives the tenant power, favors the tenant. Landlords don't like that. So you be very, very careful when you renew a lease or you do a lease with somebody to give them options only if you want them to have an option. Okay? 39, are tenants of an office building normally required to make repairs inside their leased space? Normally they are not.
Oh.
Because you want to control that in an office space because you own all that. And you need to control it because you're responsible for one thing, and you don't want them to do any shoddy repairs inside your building. In a retail space, they are responsible for what they do inside their space. Okay? Number 40, what is HVAC and who is responsible for its operation in an office building? Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and a property manager is responsible for it in an office building, or the landlord. 41, where would property managers keep copies of their project books, which include tenant contact rosters, etc., etc.? Office, car, and home. Or somebody said the general manager's office, or the maintenance office, security office, that's good too. Okay. 3 types of maintenance that would be common to any type of commercial property: landscaping, parking lot cleaning, lighting maintenance, janitorial, air conditioning, fire alarm system maintenance. Fairly straightforward. What is a legal binding contract between landlord and tenant? A lease. Okay. What type of temporary tenant would you not allow inside your shopping center, and why not? The simple answer is you don't want to put a temporary tenant in your shopping center that competes directly with your existing tenants, or you would have a lawsuit on your hands. So, and some of you listed, you know, you wouldn't want to put a tattoo parlor or embalming or strip club.
Yes!
Okay,
So funny.
name 4 types of commercial properties managed by property managers. If that wasn't a gimme question, then I don't know what is, okay? That was an 8-point question.
Which one?
Huh?
Which one was it? 8-point? Oh.
Name the 4 types of commercial properties.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
that we've
I'm
been
fine.
talking about today. Okay,
Yeah.
what is the primary reason for contracting for winter services? Primary reason, safety. Okay? Yes, you want your customers to be able to get in, but you need safety. That's the most important. What equipment is absolutely necessary for security officers? Communications equipment, radio or cell phone or something. Okay? Who's responsible to enforce the requirements of commercial property leases?
Property manager.
Property manager. In 2 aspects of security operations would be important to clarify in a contract, clearly define rules of engagement, what they're allowed to do, hours of operation, area of operation.
Whoa.